This operation is what's that appetite. The that is the master. Citizens then the battle of Africa is the question. What was the purpose of the liberation when we got up a peaceful transition? What is the purpose of the constitution when the government disrespect the constitution? What is my freedom of expression when you judge me because of my expression? Look what you're doing to this nation. I'm teaching the future generation. See our leaders become misleaders and see our mentors become commenters. Freedom fighters become dictators. They look at the youth and say we are distractors. We are fighting for freedom. See our about Potukola Jote. We are fighting for freedom. Every backwards tomorrow to chat them. We are fighting for freedom. But then massing the Kabum Karamoja. We are fighting for freedom. Boy, Machirian no go forty Woody Woody. We are fighting for freedom. Whether you want doctor or a farmer, whether you want data or policeman, could have been a tax driver who was cleaning, could have been a lawyer, could have been a soldier. We are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for freedom. But you got the money for mama. We are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for freedom. Yes, man, like Martin Luther said, in the end, we remember nothing about our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
All right, Dominicans, a special good afternoon, a special greetings to you wherever you are listening or tuned in at this time. As Martin Luther King said once, and that brother Bobby Wine out of Uganda, he being the opposition leader, just echoed in song. At the end, we won't remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Indeed, that is a good statement to get us up and running this afternoon. Dominicans, we are here. Those of you in the region, those of you further afield, good afternoon to you in a very, very special way. That is your favorite program each and every afternoon, Sunday afternoon, that is the Civic Vibes program right here on social media, Facebook page. We are here and we are ready to go. We are set, we are well oiled as it were, and we are ready to go. Today being the 1st of May, yes, it's a brand new month. You better get that right. It's a brand new month, the 1st of May, 2022. Soon we will be in June, and you know, once we reach June, once we get to June, then basically we can start to count down the number of days for 2022 to be expired. But Dominicans, we are here. Paula Celeste, the co-host of the program, she's here as well. So we are expecting to have a very interesting, a very informative, a very educative program this afternoon here as well. Obviously, we always like to mix it up with some entertainment, and so that will form part of this afternoon's program. We have a packed agenda for you this afternoon. We're going to talk to a Kalinago brother, an erudite brother. You know, you have been seeing him, hearing him. He's no stranger to us in Dominica, in the name of Mr. Paul Barron. This guy can tell you, I listen to this guy over and over, and trust me, there's something about this guy that appeals to me very, very much. And so he is here this afternoon. He's going to unpack, as it were, or help us unpack the first segment of the Civic Vibes program this afternoon, right here, from around 4:05, thereabout this afternoon. So in just a bit, we're going to have him take center stage on the screen, as it were, and he will be telling you much more about himself in just a bit, and we will get into the meat of the discussion here in just a bit with our brother Barron from the Kalinago territory in just a bit. It promises to be a very interesting discussion, if I know this brother very, very well. So call a friend now, call a neighbor, call someone, tell them come around the Civic Vibes table this afternoon, where we're going to have another engaging, another civic-minded program, the program each and every Sunday that you so love to listen to and you so love to contribute to as well. In the next segment of the program, around the 6 o'clock hour, we'll be trying to engage our brother from Antigua and Barbuda, that is Mr. Ian Hughes, better known as Magic. The guy said, just call him Magic. And I can tell you, he's gonna bring down some magic or do some magic for us here this afternoon. No stranger to Civic Vibes. He has been on our program a couple of times already. So we'll be hearing from Brother Magic later on in the program. And to kind of bring down the curtains on things here later on, we're gonna turn to the opposition leader that is out of Uganda. They call him Bobby Wine, AKA Bobby Wine. We're gonna hear a speech that he gave at a summit in Geneva, I think sometimes this month, yeah, this month they're about. Well, we are in May already, so last month. So last month, yes, he gave a very inspiring speech, very motivating speech. So to bring down the curtains on things, here on this program, we're gonna hear from the opposition leader, a very young man, very innovative young man. We're gonna hear from him when we are done with this program, Ernest there this afternoon to kind of bring down things here. So Dominicans, yes, we are here and we are ready to go. All right, let me just ask Paula. Paula, are you ready to go? All right, Paula is ready to go. So let me, without a further ado, have Paula say hi and good afternoon to many of you out there at this time. Paula, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Lofty.
Yes.
And how are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, Lofty, I was asking, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, Paula. Thank you. Pretty well.
I know, Lofty, it was indeed a very interesting weekend. Very, very busy.
Indeed, yes. Yes. Yeah. Just change that screen so that. Yeah, go ahead.
Good, nice. I would like to say good afternoon to all our viewers this afternoon, by whatever media you are locked into this afternoon. A pleasant Sunday afternoon to you. Also, good afternoon to our guest, Mr. Paul Barron, and the man from Antigua. He's from Antigua, right, Lofty? Antigua and Barbuda. Yes.
Magic.
Magic. Yeah, he's no stranger to our Civic Vibes, Lofty, like you said before, you know.
I know it. He was a creeper.
Okay, but yes. Okay. Yeah, so I would like to say good afternoon to everyone. And it's been a pleasure, as usual, to have to give some information. And we are looking forward to a very interesting program this afternoon, as usual. So once again, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you.
All right, Paula, thank you very, very much. Thank you very much indeed, Paula. As I always say, you are one of the formidable ladies in Dominica. and I couldn't ask for a better tag team partner in what we do here in terms of trying to help build Dominica block by block, situation by situation, issue by issue, each and every Sunday right here. So Paula, again, thank you very much for your zealousness as it pertains to country. Thank you very much. Let me now move across to our first formidable guest. He's here, Mr. Baron. Good afternoon to you, sir, and how are you?
Hi, good afternoon, Lofty, and how are you?
Doing pretty well, doing pretty well.
Okay, great. And I'd like to extend greetings to Paula as well. I've known Paula since I was a boy, and I do believe she saw something in me as you did from my early ages. So I'm really pleased that she's there and participating and helping. You're right to suggest that she's a formidable partner and she'll help you to achieve your goals, but not just yours, the stated goals and intentions of every Dominican. I think it is rather fitting, Mr. Duro, that we're having this program on May 1st and also to discuss the issue of youth unemployment. And as it is known, May 1st is celebrated as Labor Day in most parts of the world. So I find that to be quite a synergy. And as I have always expressed in the past, I will seek to do justice to the subject matter and bringing to light some of the general concerns and further matters of universal concern confronting Dominican's youth and also the region and the world by extension. So I feel very honored to be part of your list of guests this evening.
Yes, Mr. Brown, thank you very much. Paul, I wanted to say something to you.
Hi,
yeah,
Paula.
Mr. Baron. Who do I call you this afternoon? I call you Paul or I call you Mr. Baron?
Either way, these are my names.
Okay, good. Like you rightly said, I have known you from since you were a boy. I remember the good old days when you used to come to the restaurant. You remember that very well.
Of course I do. Of course I do.
So Paul, it's been a pleasure really having you this afternoon. And it's been a while. You know, I'm really following up with what's really taking place, you know, hearing the voice that I've not really seen you for a while in person. So it's been a pleasure, Paul, to have you this afternoon.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you. Much obliged.
Yes, thank you very much, Paula, for your opening salvo, as it were. Greeting, Brother Baron. Just before I turn across, or I move over to Brother Baron for his opening statements, as it were, on the topic, let me just give our listeners, our viewers as well, the idea of the topics. Yes, you heard me right, topics. That is how formidable his brother is. He's taking on 2 topics within the space of 2 hours. We're gonna deal with the first segment of this program, really the unemployment situation where our young persons are concerned in Dominica. Paul Baron is a young man himself. He has been and continue to work with young people alongside young persons. So that is the path that he's going to walk us through this afternoon. That is basically his domain. And so he's well equipped, he's well capable, and he's going to try his best to deliver for us as to everything and anything that pertains to the unemployment situation where our young persons in Dominica, they are concerned. As well, alongside the unemployment situation, it would be remiss of us if we did not touch on another aspect, another segment of that same conversation whereby young persons can feel empowered. Young persons they have an avenue to go out there and try harder, try better for themselves. And what better avenue they can choose, that is if they choose to, the political avenue that is. So again, this afternoon, we're gonna hear from Brother Baron as to how our young persons in Dominica, even if some of them are unemployed, how they can use the political process that our country affords them every 4.5, 5 years to sort of make that change for better, one for themselves, by extension their families, and also by country as well. So these are the 2 prime areas that Brother Baron is going to kind of dig into this afternoon and get us some better perspective on where we are with things this afternoon, especially among the young persons in and around the country. Brother Baron, without further ado, I move across to you, bro. In terms of persons, Brother Baron, first up on your chest yourself, in terms of persons who may not know much of Paul Baron, can you just, kind of put the icing on the cake as it were, who Paul Baron is?
All right, good afternoon again. Well, it would take much to sum up in terms of my philosophy of, how do you say that, hats that I wear, but I consider myself as someone who has Dominica as at heart, having been born and raised in Dominica and been involved in the political process, but more so leadership and governance. I've had the opportunity to work very intimately with stakeholders and also young persons throughout the island. I have been afforded the opportunity to be the president of the National Youth Council and also chairman of the Atkinson Village Council. I have also held many other community-based roles to include chairman of various political party associations, president of youth organizations and the likes. But what that means essentially is that I've always found it very important to lead from wherever I was, however little that may be, as early as volunteering in the villages, in common community day service activities and the likes. I've seen it as being necessary, and I say that to be quite necessary because my involvement in public life started when I was only 18. I was the youngest council of the Kingston Village Council, and having a burning desire to serve, I put myself up for public office and was very successful, in fact, in winning the poll at that time. And from that point, I moved on to the Dominica State College, and I believe that is where the sort of introduction or indoctrination rather occurred when I met my good friend Joshua Francis and Colin Baptist. I think many Dominicans may know who they are, my professors at that time. And of course, I began rubbing shoulders with Jai Isaiah Bino, Kelva Dara and the likes. And I remember early on, we used to sit around the school blocks, if you consider it as that, and plan for the future, not knowing that we ourselves would play a very integral role in Dominica's future and continue to do so. So I want to begin by saying that essentially I'm no stranger to the Dominican public domain, and I want to also reassure and ensure the Dominican public that I will continue to find ways to serve. This afternoon, we're looking at the question of youth unemployment and also the political process. And these are two, what I consider matters of universal concern, which are very much intertwined with each other. You will find that every society is very keenly, and I say very keenly, interested in the development of young persons. And what that means is that the youth does represent the bedrock of any society. That is where the energy, the drive, the talents, and the skills, and also the aspirations are. And leaders are charged with the responsibility thereof to ensure that young persons' interest is upheld, but more importantly, their voices be heard. It is necessary to look at the Dominica unemployment situation over a period of at least the data, what the data suggests, 10 years, although we can consider it as being much more. I had the opportunity to look through two more salient reports, which was the UNICEF, which was done by UNICEF and also the World Bank. I must say the statistics is very alarming and also very frightening. And for me as a leader, it's a rude awakening to know the extent, as far as the data suggests, how our young persons are unemployed and also disadvantaged. The data for unemployment in Dominica and in the Caribbean is very scarce. And I say scarce because it is closely pinned to the national censuses that are carried out. And as you're well aware, that is spread across 10 years, and a lot can happen in 10 years. One of the things that we have identified is that in order to truly understand and assess and plan for ensuring that young persons are gainfully employed, data has to be readily available. And that is our first pitfall. As you're aware, there is no known agency or institution rather or bureau that focuses specifically on gathering and measuring unemployment, as the national statistics being an exception. And because of that, we would need now to look at some of the what you call the international partners, World Bank, UNICEF, and the likes. In 2001, our unemployment rate stood at about 11.1%. In 2013, it had gone up to 13.9. What it means is that over a period of time, it naturally, or well, however unnatural or natural it was, increased to the point at which it is now. UNICEF puts us at our prime youth, which is about 15 to 24, as 11,600 persons. You will also understand and appreciate that the youth age ends at 35, as it is commonly known. That data or that report does not provide a full picture as to how many young persons are of that age. However, the World Bank sought to capture it by identifying that the unemployment rate of young persons is double that of the national unemployment rate, which stands now at 28.9%. There are some sources which suggest that it is more. However, I don't want to dwell on opinions, and would only seek to address the issue based on facts. What we know for a fact is that we have an increasing, or rather we have a huge supply, or in that case, demand for jobs. However, we have very little jobs to fill those positions. One of the deficiencies we recognize is that young persons increasingly are afforded the opportunity for an education, having instituted and legislated the universal access to secondary education, and to a greater or lesser extent, access to tertiary education. So the issue is not that students are not being educated, but what we have found essentially is that the job relevant skills that the 21st century demand, with an emphasis on digital revolution, is not being taught to them. So you can consider young persons as being skill deficient in that case. And that really just points to our education system. Dominica is no exception, as the other Caribbean islands are similarly experiencing the same, Antigua, Grenada, and the likes. So while young persons may assume that they're being trained for the job market, they really are not. So that is one of the issues that we have to be able to identify and address in the Dominica education system, by preparing young persons for the job market. We also noted that young persons lack very essential soft skills in order for them to be gainfully employed, but more importantly, in order for them to be marketable. So there are certain skills that you don't learn in the classroom, but it can also be provided for outside of the classroom in the form of whether it can be considered an extracurricular activity, or rather a relevant authority taking up the responsibility to help young persons become more marketable. And some of those skills are considered like emotional intelligence, communication skills, manners and etiquette, and the likes. I hope that you can appreciate that what I'm seeking to do is to identify some of the deficiencies that exist, and also to position the discussion whereby young persons can, and the general public can understand and arrive at certain solutions through the recommendations that we're making. One of the challenges that we have in Dominica is that the private sector is what is considered weak or underdeveloped. In most cases, the economic term to suggest whether private sector is healthy is to note that it is robust, and there's also always a need for expansion. As I have identified on a similar program I had earlier this week, Dominica's private sector is not very inclined to expand beyond its current state, because the economic environment, and by economic environment, I mean very little what you consider growth in the economy, and what economists consider as macroeconomic growth. So where an enabling environment exists for a private sector to expand, or players within the private sector to expand, they will. However, if they don't see the market conditions as being favorable, then the chances are they will limit their or postpone the expansion until periods whereby they see favorable market conditions. It is no surprise, and it is very what you consider glaring and very apparent to know that a number of young persons are not working. You commonly hear about the NEP and also the Clay Harbor, but these are only the only available options, so to speak, and we'll touch on some of that later on. So in an economy which suggests which shows positive growth, we can almost expect the expansion of the private sector. But in the absence of that, you can almost see growth in that sector being retarded. One of the more salient points to note is that for the businesses in Dominica and also for the potential business owner or entrepreneur, there are certain what you call doing business conditions that must exist. So, for example, the doing business report would rank Dominica, if I'm not mistaken, the last I saw is 60. What that means is that there are certain red tapes or certain restrictions that allows for a business to come in and just set up and move smoothly. So, for example, if there are investors outside of the country who sees Dominica as a potential market to take advantage of, there are a number of enabling environments that must exist in order for that business to thrive. We know notably that there have been sort of an effort to expand the private sector along the lines of the real estate investment businesses through the citizenship by investment program. But you will know that over time, some have done well while others have not. And there are notable examples in Dominica. I don't necessarily have to point to them. But without those businesses sort of taking off, it would be insufficient for them to sort of absorb our talent base. So what you're looking at essentially is a melting pot. And for obvious reasons, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything because I respect the basis and also the sort of tone that your discussions normally take. We're not looking at a situation in Dominica which is favorable to young persons. Now, in the presence of unemployment or mass unemployment, we have a situation where other social ills are going to creep in. For example, crime and violence, narcotics, teenage pregnancy, and juvenile delinquency. So when you see incidences of that seeping through our social fabric, it means therefore that the situation is grim. And it is no surprise you can take a drive around Dominica and you can get a real sense. I have had the opportunity to conduct more than 7 national tours. And with those tours, I have gone through the length and breadth of Dominica, every community, every district, every parish. And you always sense and almost feel the frustration that young persons have. And as a leader, to be honest with you, it has had such an impact on me. In most cases, I go home to my father and I said, Dad, the situation in Dominica is nowhere where it needs to be. And undoubtedly, his advice would be to keep pressing on. And because of that, I have continued to stay at the forefront of Dominica's public domain with the efforts of remedying the situation. Yeah. Generally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, brother. You really gave us an opening here in terms of some things to chew on, which I took some notes, so we'll be kind of going back and kind of having you expound on some of them. But sure. Paul, in terms of young persons, whenever I hear you speak, you have this passion for young persons. There's this, kind of burst, as it were, for young persons' development, young persons' better future. Since you know yourself, what prompted you in that direction to have such affinity for young persons and their development?
Well, that would really stem from my family background. I have a very large family. In fact, I was born in the rural community of Antigua. I grew up in different areas in the Kalinago territory, or hamlets rather, Concord and also Batacov, which my father is from. And from an early age, I always saw it as rather calling, having a greater interest in the well-being of just not only my family, but also the wider community. For example, I'm the only son. I have 9 sisters. So you could well imagine that the nurturing that I got would always ensure that there's a great degree of empathy. But more importantly, I believe what sparked my interest is I had the opportunity to have I think at that time it was a meeting of some sort. And the decision, or the players within the meeting was seeking to reach a decision whereby resources would be allocated. And the way in which it was done was very tribal in that sense. And you would hear individuals saying, well, that person should get, and that person should not get, and that person should get. And I found that to be very interesting. And I took a look around the meeting table, and I noticed that I was the only young person present. And I took it to mean that by being present at the meeting was the opportunity for me to give voice to young persons, to give a voice to persons who were not part of that. And that is something important to note, Lofty and Paula. You will find that when the matter of youth development comes up, what you call the object of the meetings and the discussions would mean, the objective rather, would mean that we want to know and understand the extent of the challenges that young persons are confronting, but they themselves are not around the meeting table. So we cannot assume what a young man or young woman from Portsmouth is experiencing, unless we get a first-hand experience or a first-hand sort of discussion with that strata of society to know exactly what they're experiencing. You will find also that the only time young persons come on the forefront of national development to any significant extent is usually around the political process, and hence the reason why we are also discussing that. So the powers that be, or the leaders of the day, will ensure that in some way they're able to fashion a communication around having an interest for young persons, but it only occurs then. And after that spell or that period has ended, everything goes back to normal. So because I understood that, and you have to understand that I have been in politics for 21 years. I'm 36 years. I got involved in politics when I was 16. So you could well imagine the number of conversations and dialogues and discussions and meetings I have had over that period of time, and always at the decision table. So when I understood that young persons need to have a voice and must be always represented, that is where I stood my ground and continued therefore.
But Paul, let me just interject here as we are at that point. It is even, and I'll be honest with you, I'll be honest with the public out there, even
By
coming up with that program today, we are talking about youth business, young people business. My team searched, I had other persons searching, and we could hardly find a young person or two to come and add their voice to that conversation to speak about their business. So the question to you, Mr. Baron, is what do you think are some of the challenges that presents themselves to the young people? Why these young people are so reluctant to come around a table to discuss their business?
Well, what I have found is that young persons, not that they don't want to, but in most cases, the mere association, and you have to understand that who we are essentially has been at the forefront of championing Dominica's cause. The mere association, I suppose, with certain individuals or certain movements, there's always a fear for victimization thereof. And because of that, in order to protect their economic interests, however little that might be, they sort of shy away from that opportunity. So that really is paramount. It is very sad. And my journey as a leader have me now been crystallized. As you know, I have taken a very arduous process, first in order to solidify faith, but more importantly, but to understand the many men and women who have struggled to even ensure that we have universal suffrage, which is the ability to vote, but also to have a voice, a freedom of speech of which the Constitution affords us. And so I really would want every young person to understand that they should never shy away from an opportunity to represent their interests. Because, and you know, a senior politician told me that. I recall that I think, advocating for some particular interest, and he said, nobody's going to do it for you unless you do it for yourself. So that is really my message to every young Dominican out there.
Yes, Paul, thank you. Thank you very much for at least kind of laying it on the table why some persons, especially the young people among us, they are sort of reluctant to come forth. And it's conversations like these and others that we are having as adults that, you know, kind of trying to get them around the table, trying to eradicate or do away with that fear, as it were, because, you know, fear itself is not good. And having young persons face that level of fear of a victimization or whatever it is, especially as it pertains to their further development, it is not good for us as a society, and no matter from what strata of society we are operating at, be it from a governmental standpoint, and the opposition standpoint, you know, just NGOs, whatever it is, the young people, we must make space for them. Let them, give them the avenue so that their voice can be heard, or their voices rather can be heard. And so that is why Civic Vibes, no matter what we discuss, the young people's agenda will always be our agenda. And so hence that discussion this afternoon.
I just wanted to add, Loftus, if you understand the sort of way in which our societies are developed and built. For example, let's take, for example, the public service. The public service of the Commonwealth of Dominica essentially exists to address, to disseminate, to allocate, to regulate, and to ensure that the public, or the business of the public, reaches everyone, the beneficiaries. Young persons are one beneficiary. So when you see that there are, for example, the efforts by certain interest groups to sort of subdue or to sort of malign the process of or the operations of these organizations, and then the larger population in that case, and the beneficiaries of which it is intended to serve, cannot be served. So we have to underscore that. And you note that earlier on I noted that when I was around the decision table, there was always a great extent of tribalism. Now, government, whether it is the Commonwealth of Dominica or the Commonwealth or the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica, or any government for that matter, if your policies, and please note, if your policies is not proportionate to the larger population, then you essentially are not getting the job done. For example, if a policy which is directed at young persons or the elderly or some extent of social welfare does not reach those persons that are greatest in need, and is not done so with a degree of how you call discrimination, then it is not serving its purpose. And we have to understand that. For example, if you look at the dynamics of the Commonwealth of Dominica, 21 constituencies, 10 parishes, 72,000 persons. I normally stick at 72. I don't know. The last report I saw, it was 72,900 persons. If, for example, the government of the day cannot ensure that these 72,000 souls, as I normally say, is taken care of, then it is not achieving its purpose. And it must not be done on any level of discrimination, because above all, we have to ensure that our universal right, and the United Nations has done an extremely good job at ensuring that there are certain rights that must be upheld. For example, the rights of child and children, the rights of youth, the rights of indigenous persons, the rights of women and also of men. If those rights are not being championed on, then it is not achieving its purpose or its stated objectives. And that has to be underscored. For example, I believe it is utterly barbaric to ignore any young person based on his own affiliation or convictions and the likes. You know, for example, if you're looking at a policy which seeks to address the issue of unemployment, in Dominica, then that policy must ensure that it reaches every young person, irrespective of who the individual are. And what you'll find is that there are opportunities, and I will know quite well, there are opportunities where young persons can be employed in certain programs, if you want to consider. But if you don't have a certain conviction or affiliation, then you will go wanting. And what does that seek? What does that do? What does that do? It destroys the aspirations and hope of these young individuals. And that is really where our challenge is in Dominica. We have to ensure that the policies are far-reaching and it reaches the beneficiary in that case, which is the young people of Dominica, who in that case we intend to be changed individuals. If we cannot do that, then we will continue to have a problem. And 72,000 people is not a lot of people to take care of.
Mr. Barron, let us just stay on that point a little bit. Can you explain further, expound on that point that you made, that 70,000 persons, the government of the day, whichever government it is, supposed to be able to take care of these 72,000 persons? Just kind of elaborate a bit what you mean by that.
What I mean by that, Mr. Durham, is that if you're looking at a specific economic or social policy, now you and I know each other, similarly as many Dominicans know each other. We're a very small, knitted community. And it is on that basis that we should ensure that the policies that are being done and formulated reaches everyone. What I mean to say is that population has been, I believe how do you call them? The experts have been suggesting that our population is a problem to mean that we don't have enough people. The question is, do we need enough people? Now, Dominica is a very remote island in the Caribbean. On top of that, we have certain challenges which you and I are aware of in terms of the climatic changes and what is also considered as not having an abundance of resources to include oil and the likes, or certain precious metals that can help capitalize and fuel our economy. Now, what we should begin to do is to look at our population as an advantage, because here it is we can say to the rest of the world, the Commonwealth of Dominica, I have 72,000, sure that all these people, population of 100,000, boatloads of people live in this island almost on a daily basis in the present economic malaise that we have. So we should begin to look at our population as an advantage, as having so few persons, and because of that, we can spread the love over that population. And that is really what I mean when I say 72,000 people is not a lot of people to take care of.
True. Yes, Paul, thank you very much for that, explanation as it were. Paula is there. She's just taking notes. She's really soaking in, as it were, all what you said. I
can tell.
She looks very engaged. She will get to you in just a while at some points. But as we continue on there, as someone made a statement on the feed, let me just see if I could go back to it and have you expound on it, Paul. Peter Carbon is saying many young men are wasting their lives on the block whilst time passes by. What would you, or how would you respond to Peter Carbon in read that statement? Read that statement.
Good afternoon, Mr. Carbon, and thank you for your question. In fact, I was asked that very same question just recently, and I'll begin by saying that I have no issues or qualms thereof of seeing any young man on the block, and I'll tell you why. When you see a young man on the block, you see an evident, or rather a proven evidence that something is wrong in the country. Now, young persons throughout the world congregate on blocks for different reasons. Sometimes it may mean that there are certain family dysfunctionality that pressures and pushes them out of the household. Now, in the case of Dominica, the most obvious reasons why young persons are on the block is because they have not been afforded an opportunity to be gainfully employed within what you know as the system to ensure that their time is done so, or their time is utilized properly. So when you see a young man on the block, he is a victim. And that is the most accurate explanation that I can give to you, Mr. Carbon. He is a victim. Now, as social practitioners, we should ensure that very little wind up on the block. And by way of doing that is to ensure that we have a very buoyant society and buoyant economy to support the young men and the women. Now, one thing you'll also notice that Dominica has been on a path of what I call a brick and mortar development policy or development agenda. What we have done is that we have sought to deal with our infrastructure at the expense of the social fabric and the cultural fabric. For example, let's say I want to take my wife and my 2 daughters and my son on a sort of, what you say, a social night. Where would I go? There's very few places that a young man and a young woman, a young family in Dominica can go to recreate. Yes, we can go to the rivers and the beaches, and we can go to the mountains and hike, but there is very few places. Now, the quality of life in a country has to support the activities and the social activities of us as being human beings. If you go over to St. Kitts, you go over to Guadeloupe, you can almost certain that you'll see persons congregating around specific parks and cultural centers, even to hear a night of jazz music or orchestra of some sort or some musical theater. Now,
yes.
If I am a young man right now, I don't have no work, I don't have no money, my mother pressured me to come out of the house, my woman in problems with me because I can't buy her some good gabs. Where are I going to go? I'm going to call my partner. Boss man, I come and check you, but let's go on the block and smoke 2 joints and drink a little BB. You understand me? So what I mean to say is that we must, and it is not hard to see, just note what the powers that be have been concentrating their efforts on. It has been solely on brick and mortar. Even what we already have not been sort of enhanced and renovated to ensure that we can at least use it momentarily. When last have you been to the Arab House of Culture? You know, so we have to ensure that there are certain things to support our livelihoods, and the quality of life has been sort of almost skillfully sabotaged in exchange for this mass brick and mortar development agenda. Yes. So that is really some of the things, and that is why you see young men and young women finding themselves on the block and the alleyways. There's nowhere to go to.
True. Paul, you're making a very, very interesting point there, a very correct point at that. In that, the other day I was thinking to myself, I was saying, but where can we are talking about young persons now, so we are keeping it to young persons. But I was asking myself about a week ago, where in Dominica can Dominicans go and have some quote unquote civilized entertainment?
Exactly, my friend.
And so you really struck a chord when you said that a while ago. Where can young persons now go to kind of release that energy that they have, especially if they're not gainfully employed? Where?
Exactly.
Just where?
There must be an avenue, because when you all pressured up, just consider yourself an overheating radiator. You have no option but to explode, and that is in this explosion you see all the the social ills occurring. If you're not spending your time wisely and efficiently, young women, young men get involved in different activities resulting in teenage pregnancy. Young men going on the block because there's no other option. So you can almost say that if the block didn't exist, we would have more problems, because at least there's somewhere that they can go and sort of recline for a while. And I've been observing that for a very long time now. When I recognize, and I suppose it's when I started having my family, when I started having children, I suppose it has this sort of effect on you, where you want to ensure that the quality of life that your children have, rather the quality of life that you did not have, your children have. And it started occurring to me, and I said, but why this sort of sole mission to only build infrastructure, although necessary, but not at the expense of our social fabric and our cultural fabric? So I just wanted to make that point.
Plug that in. True. Thank you very much. A brother here is saying by the name of Brian Joseph on the live feed. He's basically agreeing with your comment. He's saying that most of these young persons, they are victim of a failed economy. Jaira Hector, I am assuming that person is a young person as well. She writes here, it's the lack of opportunities that cause we, the young people, unemployed. We only have two options, on the block and NEP. That's what Jaira Hector.
That is very correct. I'd like to commend you. What did you say her name was? Jaira
Hector. I hope he's a male, eh? Jaira.
Well, I'm sorry.
A female, sorry. A female.
I'm sorry, but I really want to commend you, young individual, for making that point, because it is really just blatantly true. Huh? There is no option. While the question of NEP came up, I sought to address it recently on my last program, and I suppose most young persons, when they speak to their leaders, the first word that pops out in their mouth is NEP. Now, the National Employment Program, however great the idea was in its conceptualization and implementation, was only meant to address a particular need. And on that basis, young persons wanted job-relevant skills, but more importantly, experience. Because in most cases, you go to an employer and the employer says, but where have you worked? Now, if you have not worked anywhere, your chances of getting the job is very slim. Now, the NEP sought to address that by offering internship, but what it has resulted in is a more sort of long-term solution to address our unemployment situation, but it can only do so much. I've also identified in the previous program that it does not afford you the sort of financial stability or it doesn't give you stability of tenure to ensure that you can seek different financial instruments from the credit union, the banks. You can't get a loan because your job is only on a 6 months provisional basis. So if you had considered the NEP being, if there was a similar attempt within Dominica to sort of take off where the NEP left, and in most cases you call that employment agencies or bureau. Antigua has a fabulous experience. It's called One Stop Job Center, and there's some other examples in the Caribbean where young persons can sort of gravitate towards for a while, get certain relevant skills, and then move on. Now, the private sector hasn't been able to fully absorb the NEP interns, and NEP interns, rather the NEP has really become what in the more developed countries you call social insurance, because it is only an opportunity to ensure that you work in exchange for an income. In the absence of the public and the private sector not being able to absorb young persons within these organizations or the systems, if you want to consider it, it doesn't really help. It really doesn't help.
Yeah. Jaira Hector is a male, so
I'm sorry, sir. Yes, my apologies.
I want to apologize. He explicitly said that in the chat, and while she was speaking, I went on his profile just to kind of confirm. So yes.
But you made a very good point, sir.
Yes. So Brother Jairo Hector, sorry for the mistake we made. And thank you. And Paul, he's a young man listening to the conversation.
Okay, how nice.
Yes.
How nice.
Let me see if I could get to some comments, because our conversation we're having, Paul, it's an all-inclusive conversation. So whilst we are speaking, we need to get some of the sentiments coming across. Brother Nep Packet, another young brother from Granby, he's writing here, there is a third option. Band together from a national perspective and demand a change that we want to see. I assume by the next election, the percentage of youthful voters are in the majority. If only we were united in our voices and goals, this administration would have no choice but to bow its head. That is Brother Nep Packet from Granby.
I believe I know that individual quite well indeed. And I suppose he's ushering in the political process aspect of our discussion, unless we can deal with it later, but I tend to agree with you. You made a very important point. In fact, our youth population is near 40% of the larger population. Also, we have an aging population in Dominica. Now, what that means essentially is the responsibility to transform this country really bears on our shoulder. Hence the reason why I do what I do, because I recognize that there's no other option. In most cases, what you find in each election cycle, there's always a huge effort to ensure that young persons vote. Why that might be? Because our older parents as well, grandparents, are already very seasoned in the political process. Young persons tend to sort of be on a indecisive spectrum, so to speak. And because of that, sorry?
They're sort of on a political pendulum.
Exactly. And on that basis, the political parties would essentially rush to gain support from young person. But that is not what we should consider as being the better solution. And what Mr. Packet is suggesting is that as young Dominicans, we have a responsibility to give direction to the political process. Now, if you understand as a young person that you are challenged, your friend is challenged, your BFF is challenged, it means therefore that you have to very strategically consider where you are positioning your support. And I'm not here to tell anybody where they should put their support. That's not what I'm here to do. What I'm here to suggest is that if you understand that you are disadvantaged and you continue to be so, then the option really is to ensure that there is some significant change in the focus and the direction of the country. And I believe that is where young persons really need to ensure and rather thoughtfully consider. Because I have been in the inner, I often say I've been in the inner factory rooms of the two dominant political parties in Dominica, that is the United Workers' Party and also the Dominica Labour Party. And because of that, I clearly understand how and what the modus operandi are. So we are at what you consider a fork in the road in Dominica, and it is very critical at this point in time.
Yes, indeed. Let me just alert our listeners now, it's only 5 o'clock hour, and around that time we normally take a break, but I know Brother Paul, he has a lot to say, so we're gonna kind of go against protocol this afternoon and not take that break, get in some of your comments to the brother.
I'm in the comfort of my home, so I suppose I'm not in my office. I will have to consider my commute.
Yeah, no problem. So we're gonna take some of your comments on the live feed and send it to Brother Paul's way so that he can get into some of your questions before we kind of veer off into the other aspect of the conversation, which is the political consideration for young persons. Let me see here. Everlasting Peter is saying powerful conversation. you are the conscience of the ambitious young people. That is some kudos coming your way from
Thank you
Brother
very much.
Everlasting Peter. Let me see if we get to some more here in the interest of time. Okay, someone is asking it, but I had it on my plate as well to ask you, Paul. So let me just kind of condense it based on what the person is asking as well. That is Patterson. You were the president of the National Youth Council once upon a time. What did you do, Paul? You and your team did then to kind of help young persons, push young persons' agenda at the NYC's level?
Well, I'm happy you asked, Patterson. I had the privilege to lead a team of young persons at the NYC for a period of 2 years, which is the stipulated term, or the allotted time rather. In my efforts and theirs, and also other strategic partners, one of the major achievements that we had was the Strong Body, Strong Mind project. Through the efforts of myself and other very skillful individuals, we were able to bring over $500,000 into the council, 700 and near 50,000, if I'm not mistaken. And what that project sought to address is that in my national tours that I had conducted, there was a great degree of, or deficiency rather, among the school systems, whereby young persons had little or no activities after school. And that period of delinquency could only mean that the young minds or the young individuals were not constructively engaged in activities which would help with their education and their overall well-being. So because of that, and for the support of CREED and United Way Trinidad and Tobago, we were able to set up, conceptualize, set up, and implement after-school extracurricular programs at Bafa State, or the primary school, Newtown Primary School, rather, the Kalinago territory, and also in Grand Sofuya as well. Sofuya Scott said. I was not able, my term ended before that project had ended in its entirety, but I can only assume that all efforts was made to ensure that a great number of young persons were gainfully engaged. One of the things that I saw, again, as I had said earlier, is that I always noted that the interest of young persons was not being sort of iconized or sort of challenged to any great extent. And through my efforts, and also the other executive members of the National Youth Council of Dominica, we ensured that at every point of the way that we were at the decision table and advocating for the best interests of young persons. We spent some time sort of not remodeling, but adding to the youth policy that was at that time being looked at. Sadly, I would have expected, and it was the expectations of the council, that the youth policy would have gotten to the level of parliament, whereby a decision would be made and it becomes law. But I can tell you safely, the policy would hold the government accountable for a number of things, and I suppose that was one of the reasons they back out of that discussions, and to date, it has not been passed. You have to understand that as a council, a non-governmental organization, to note in that sense, forming part of the civil society, meant that we would play or have a shared responsibility for young persons. I was also very concerned deeply that the council was not receiving sufficient funding. For example, we only got $12,000 over the course of 3 months. Now, I'm not complaining, because we were able to use those money to our greater advantage and the advantage of young persons. But what I'm appealing to the powers that be is that that is no money to sort of capitalize an organization of that importance to young persons. And regularly, we had sought to, whether by way of communication, both in person and through the normal channels, ensure that amount had gone up. And that situation is not only limited to the National Youth Council, all other civil organizations as well. You could consider not having that sort of capital base to do any significant work in the country. The Division of Youth also plays a very critical role, and we had and continue to play a very assistive and having a shared responsibility with that division over the time. But I can ensure you that our voices will always heard, excuse me. And because of that, we could ensure that young person's interest was upheld.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. Just before Paula chime in there, here on Civic Vibes, we normally sometimes ask very tough questions, and I'm going to punch one at you now, Paul. And it is you, how you want to respond to that question. You were the president of the NYC, which you stated, and as a fact, it's supposed to be an NGO, a non-governmental organization. There is the word out there, there's a notion out there by a number of persons that the incumbent, the Dominica Labour Party, for some time have been using the NYC as a tool to their benefit. How would you respond to that? Is that true or not?
Well, the word you should have used was a breeding ground, but
Wow.
yeah, but I will dispel that.
So it's even it's okay. Go ahead.
I will dispel that to begin with. What I can tell you is that, and you know, sometimes in the public discussions, people, you know, some persons get greater attention than others based, I suppose, on who they are as individual. Now, in my personal case, you will know that in all cases, I am a very, how you call it, a very almost self-motivated mover and shaker, a pacemaker, so to speak. So if I form and become part of an organization, I will come to it with that same thrust. Now, I don't know if it was planned by man or the good Lord when we noted that the three preceding or predecessors of the National Youth Council, all at that time was key, what DNO terms operatives of the Dominica Labour Party, to include my friend Kelva and also Isaiah Binwa. But what I can tell you is that there are many Dominicans who walk through the walls of NYC. Now, NYC is a training ground for national leaders, and that is what it should be seen at. Once you have served at that level, it gives you this sort of drive to want to do more. And there are many very well-respected Dominicans who have passed through the walls of NYC. So it is not limited to just the Dominica Labour Party.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will leave it at that for now. Let me just move across to Paula so that she can win. Paula is not well warmed up, so prepare yourself, Paula.
I have no initial objections.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
okay. Lovely. I'm in class this afternoon. I'm listening to Mr. Baron and I'm taking in a lot. Mr. Baron, this topic this afternoon is very, very timely. The reason why I said that, yesterday I was approached by a young lady and she said to me, Paula, you and Lofty need to speak about the youth. And when she mentioned that, she was speaking about the youth in the community where she lives. And she was referring to the Roseau Valley area. I can actually say the area, the Roseau Valley area. And she said, there's a lot of young men who are sitting on blocks. And these young men, at the end of the day, they end up at the hospital and they treat them as mentally ill patients. And these young men are not mentally ill. Now, mark you, it's not only young men that are sitting on the block. There are young women sitting on the block as well. We don't really see them that often, but yes, there are young women sitting on the block. No, like you rightly said, when you see someone on the block, it means that they could be on the block for a number of reasons. Maybe they kicked out of the home, maybe some form of frustration, but no employment, and then they find themselves going there, and they do engage in illegal acts and all of this kind of thing. But not only that, the young lady went on to say, please say something for these young people in my community. There are 2 empty buildings in the Louisville area, And she said, you know what? The government can do something. They can make a resource center. They can put something there, so that the young people will be engaged, they'll engage themselves in some kind of skills or something. And I support her. But not only this, when you mention about the NEP, a lot of people believe because they has a little job, they work with the NEP, it's all fair and good. But how much can you really gain from the NEP? And like you said, the NEP was set up, and what it was set up for, this is not what that's really being used for. No, you are employed for 6 months. After the 6 months, where do you go from there? While you're being employed, how much do you gain? How much can you save? Can you really depend on this? And we are seeing a lot of young persons are leaving college, and then they do not really have a choice, some of them, because there's no factories, there is no really good jobs that they can really turn to, and they do not have a choice but to just gain this little employment, and it's nothing much it can really do for them. Now, another thing, I've noticed the women are more fortunate than the young men. Because sometimes I'm in town and you find like the 4 o'clock hour or 5 o'clock hour, you see a number of young women coming from work compared to that of the young men. And I'm asking, is it that the young men are not educated as well? Yes, there are some young men that are really, really highly educated. But I figure out the women are more fortunate, and by that, the young men are left to languish in the streets and do things that they really doesn't want to do, some of them. Now, the other point is, a lot of young persons in Dominica, the youths, some of them would want to be bold and brave to speak out like you are doing, Mr. Baron. But again, they fear victimization. Because when you speak to a lot of young persons, they actually say, I would really want to talk and, explain myself about my situation, but the little job that I have, if I go out there and I speak, then tomorrow I doesn't have that. Some of them tell you I have my family to take care of. I am the breadwinner of the family, of the home. And it's very much unfortunate to see what we have become in this little country, where you elaborated about the 72,000 persons. And 72,000 persons in a country where we have rich soil, we have, the water and all of this. 72,000 persons is not a lot that the government cannot really handle. But why are they not really taking care of the youth? Why are they not really listening to the plight of the youth? For me, it's only one thing in my mind, that if you teach a person to fish, they will be able to go out there and fish for themselves. But when you create the environment where the young persons have to depend on the government, and that's what we've really seen in Dominica for a number of years. So listening to you as a young man this afternoon, Mr. Barron, and where you said like when you reaches the age of 35, you now consider like the youth part of it is over. There's a lot of young persons who are even under the age of, I would say maybe 30. And some of them, they would like to own their own homes. Because before we know, a lot of young persons, when they were into agriculture and all of these, they strive for their family and all of this. But today, it's totally different. So listening to you here this afternoon, Mr. Baron, I hope a lot of youths, I'm not sure how many of them that are really tuning into this program this afternoon, but I would encourage the youths out there to speak out, stand up like how Mr. Baron is doing. And everybody cannot be victimized. So thank you, Mr. Baron, this afternoon for such very important information that we're giving to the general public. Yeah.
Thank you. Paula, when you were speaking, I can sense the level of empathy that you have in your heart. And to me, is very saddening, because you're not speaking as anyone but a mother. And I say that it's on the basis that there are many families in Dominica, far too many families in Dominica, who are just saddened by the fact that their son or their daughter cannot be gainfully employed. In fact, the greatest honor you can give your parent is to come home and say, "Mommy, I got a job." And because of that, your mother knows that you will begin to sort of take a path, a self-directed path, so to speak, to ensure that your well-being is taken care of. And also, you'll be able to take care of her needs as well when it becomes necessary. What I can say is that the challenges that are arising out of our unemployment issue in Dominica is far-reaching, and not only young persons are unemployed, there are also older adults who are unemployed. I wanted to note that you mentioned the degree of frustration and stress that arises out of it, which can be very crippling and disabling at times for a young person, often resulting in their hospitalization. And, when you see these things happening, our leaders need to understand that livelihoods are far necessary, or far more greater a priority than some of the things that are being championed or being focused on. And it really stems out of our development agenda. That is why I mentioned the question of this brick and mortar. And I've had many communications and conversation highlighting this sort of sole agenda or development strategy, which gears or is focused on this brick and mortar situation. I believe that for Dominica to truly get beyond its state, these things have to be done simultaneously. The young lady is right to suggest that the question of the multi-purpose centers, and the multi-purpose centers was something that began way back, just on the sort of borderline of the 60s, 70s and going on, and that was part of the whole community, the whole community spirit, whereby persons saw it as necessary to have those facilities to serve young persons and also people of various communities. And I can't tell how many exist today, and whether there's a focus to ensure that these multi-purpose centers are developed and to sustain the activities of their various communities. There was also at some point the question of business incubators and business hubs, whereby persons can go rent spaces. There are many talented Dominicans out there who are involved in cosmetology, who are involved in the whole beauty and beautification industry, to include barbers and the likes. Young persons are increasingly talented, and they want to be able to sort of capitalize or monetize their talents. And by monetizing their talents, they can bring bread on their table. But I suppose what we're doing today will set off a chain of reaction, and that we can ensure or seek to ensure that the discussion continues and is at the forefront of our national development for us. But thank you, Paula, for your comments.
Yeah, true. Thanks. Brother Byron, before we veer off into the political aspect of our conversation where the young people are concerned, let me ask you a very candid question that a number of us can relate to in Dominica, in terms of we hearing about its inception, tongue twister there, its inception, and also the going-ons. We have the NEP with us, the NEP, the National Employment Program. Some persons choose to call it otherwise, but for this conversation's sake, we will see it's the National Employment Program. That program was introduced by the government of the day, that is the Dominica Labour Party, to quote unquote help young persons. Nep, I want to ask you a very direct question, sir. When that program was conceptualized, what was your take on that program? And compare and contrast to its conceptualization, is it still meeting its purpose? Is everything still on track as to the aim, the objectives of that NEP program, especially in the context of young people?
Again, the NEP, when it was conceptualized, was a very, I thought at that time, that was a step in the right direction, because the situation was that a lot of young persons were leaving school, both at the level of high school, college, tertiary, and also university, and was either spilling out into the job market or returning from overseas. And the question of the day was, how do you engage all those persons, but rather how do you engage a majority of these persons coming home? And because of that, the NEP was conceptualized. Now, I was not involved in terms of the policy making or its whole structure, but what I can say is that as an individual, I too have been part of the National Employment Program, in fact, as late as 2020. And because of that, I noted that while the program affords you the opportunity to be gainfully employed, there were a number of things that were missing. And one of the more essential things was that you having stability of tenure. Now, if you don't have stability of tenure, it is not possible for you to sort of develop yourself. And by develop, I mean build a home, buy a vehicle, and invest maybe in some sort of small business idea or the likes. Now, without enabling or ensuring that these young persons could go a step further, it almost had a sort of reversing effect. So what you saw is that in most cases, you would be getting a monthly salary, but that would quickly be evaporated. Now, the NEP has different tiers, one of which would be at the community level, which is the community beautification level, whereby we saw the need to sort of clean up and keep and continue to beautify the island. There's also the 50-50 partnership with the private sector, whereby the private sector, through the individual efforts, would then gradually be absorbed into the private sector, and also through the public sector. But the blatant truth is none of that is happening at a rate that it is supposed to happen. And because of that, NEP has more or less become a social insurance rather than an opportunity to sort of give you any degree of stability of tenure beyond the 6 months provisional contract basis. The contract, and there has been some concern in terms of the legality of the contract, in terms of what the terms and conditions are. I know one aspect of the contract, which was very, what I consider as being barbaric, was that if you would be sick for some reason over 21 consecutive days, you would be terminated thereof. So there are a number of certain loopholes which really is questionable as to how you engage young persons. So it makes you very easily dispensable. It doesn't really add to your self-worth. One of the other things to consider is that while we would want the NEP to be proportionate to the youth population, it is not. And it is also, as we have identified earlier, very tribal. So there is a few what you could call pros, but the cons far outweigh the pros, and that is really no secret to the Dominican society. There's only so much that you can do, and the question is that NEP is not enshrined into the sort of public service. So you can consider NEP as being a service within a service. And if I understand clearly, NEP was also an effort which stemmed out of the experience Dominica had through its structural adjustment program when we had undergone austerity measures with the IMF. Now, in most cases, what you find is when these institutions come into sort of clean up your act, so to speak, the wage bill has to be something that needs to be considered, because that recurring expenditure is a heavy weight for the government coffers. So by creating the NEP, it does not sort of bind or bind the government to a sort of a serious arrangement whereby it cannot easily find its way out of that arrangement. So if the present government of the Commonwealth of Dominica would go away today, the NEP would be something that would be immediately considered and questioned as to its sort of longevity or continuation. So it can go away, and that is why young persons out there are so fearful. For example, if a young man for some reason echoes some sentiments in the community, and his power finds that that is not in line with his whole vision or his whole self, then tomorrow morning you can consider yourself not having a job. Are you with me, Loftus? So
yes, we are right there.
It is a very loose arrangement. It is a very loose arrangement, and because of that, you as a young person, your self-worth and your self-image, I don't see it as offering you any great credibility when you know that today or tomorrow you can have no job. So there's a lot of things. But to the young person who is on NEP, he or she may not be considering that, because for all they care, they have a job, while the vast majority of young persons don't. So you can see there's a number of things that come to play. When I started in NEP, it was in 2009, and I started off as not a timekeeper, the guys who supervisor of the beautification team. I went on to become communications officer, and I also serve as liaison to the Kalinago chief for a period of time. So while it might afford you an opportunity, what we should be concerned about regarding employment is stability of tenure and having an employment which takes care of your needs now until the point at which you retire, and retire comfortably, because we always have to think about down the road.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, brother. Just before we go into the political aspect of the conversation and what young persons can do, Joshua Francis, you mentioned his name earlier.
Yeah, he's my mentor. He's my mentor.
He's your mentor.
Yeah.
And he's listening, he's watching as well.
Oh, how nice.
And I know he's proud of you in terms of delivery.
Very much so.
He basically added in or chimed in on the conversation earlier. A couple paragraphs, I just want to see if I can run through them, and I'll just ask your comment based on what he said before we go into that direction. It says here, he entitled that contribution of his, Unemployment and Our Youth. It starts by saying from Joshua Francis, the International Labour Organization, as the ILO, is predicting that global unemployment will soar to 213 million this year. In this global labor market recession, it is estimated that 14 million jobs are being sought in rich countries, while 8 million people in developing nations are out of work. He added, almost every country has felt the crunch, and Dominica, though hailed as resilient, has not been an exception. He continues, more depressing is the fact that young people are disproportionately hit by unemployment. Out of 98 economies for which recent information is available, no less than 51 have youth unemployment rates of over 15%. In the Latin American region, this includes countries such as Jamaica at 34%, Dominica at 41%, and St. Lucia at 44%. The economy, he continues, has been so sorry that university graduates are finding a tough time to assume even basic jobs. With the civil service not actively recruiting new entrants, job seekers turn to a limping private sector. Saddled with the high capital and operational cost and discouraged by too few incentives, the productive sector has remained stubbornly sluggish, thus being unable to absorb the growing unemployment class. What good can come from any economy when a sizable chunk of young people are unemployed? He asking that all-important question. There may be a number of negative consequences, among which is a frustrated group of young persons. With job salvation not forthcoming, it may be compelling that some of these persons may venture into risky underground economy to commission income generation activities. This includes scams and other illicit trades. It says here, we are done in a while, where one may ask, are there any sunny side across the hills on the way to the roll away this cloud of youth unemployment? The answer lies in national economic vision. We must find our way back to the road of productivity and competitiveness. The public and private sector must receive an injection to boost, to get back into our own, to get us back into our own production, sorry. The administration must ride the stimulus pedals, race to progress, and demonstrate that there is a clear and visionary path of sustainable economic development for our youth of the Nature Isle. Finally, the final paragraph reads, furthermore, we may have to redefine our education and training systems. We should get more people into vocational and technical training. That aspect of vocational and technical training, we have a question we want to punch at you as well, Paul. So take note of that. That's a very good point Josh is making. Let me just read that again. Furthermore, we may have to redefine our education and training systems. We should get more people into vocational and technical training. By training our young minds to be innovative, they will be able to create jobs for themselves. We have become too academic to a point where we study without thinking of application. At this juncture, the skills demanded in the labor market must include technical training. We have a lot of graduates, yet we have limited mechanics, plumbers, electricians, among other certified workers. I know it has been a mouthful from your mentor, but
well,
it is quite on point.
If I know my mentor quite well, he well expects me to have absorbed everything of which I have.
Yes.
But he's making some very good empirical observation regarding ILO, and as well, I have looked at that report and regarding the data in the incident of Dominica, or rather the case of Dominica being 41%, is very correct to suggest, and also the crippling effects post-pandemic and even pre-pandemic, rippling or limping off rather from the financial crisis as far as 2008. What that does for local economies is really just put us in a position whereby we have to and have no choice, rather, as he suggests, to ride the stimulus pedal. As you know, that is a word in our vocabulary. It seemingly does not exist because no significant stimulus has been given to the Dominican private sector, as opposed to other regional islands who have skillfully been able to sort of inject funds into their various economies. He's also very correct regarding the sort of skills deficiency. And in fact, you will know that there are certain academic fields that are very saturated in Dominica, and everybody seems to want to work in an office setting, whereas skills and vocational training would afford a more lucrative employment opportunity. So I just wanted to really commend Mr. Francis for making the salient points and adding significant value to our conversation.
Yes, indeed. So thank you very much for responding in like manner. Thank you. We have like 25 more minutes. You'd be surprised. We only have 25 more minutes.
Time flies. Time flies.
I know. So you may have to give us your word that you may come back to if you're not done to wind up or go through.
Yes, sure, no problem.
But we'll start nonetheless. Brother Baron, in terms of, we have been talking about the unemployment situation where young persons are concerned and the plights thereof. So that is good. How now can the same young persons tap into or morph into the political process that this country offers them ever so often to sort of rectify or make that situation of theirs better? How? Just how?
Well, the first thing young persons have to recognize is that they have a very, very important role in the political process. And the right to vote by given universal suffrage is something that we must really treasure. Dominicans were not able to vote anywhere beyond or just after the 1960s and have been actively engaged in giving direction to the political, or rather the political process. It is important to understand where we are as young persons. Now, we know quite well that our neighbors are doing well. We also know the international community offers a sort of greener pastures syndrome for us, in the sense that when we leave our shores, we almost instantaneously do better. But not every Dominican youth, neither does not every Dominican wants to leave their shores, because Dominica affords us this sort of safety and to make it even more important, the quality of living in the nature island and the abundance of nature. Not everybody wants to leave that. Now, we have to be very careful in the decision making where the political process is concerned. Now, if you take a very good look, the current administration has been in power for 20 years, yes? And that's 2 decades. And now that 2 decades meant that a number of young persons either, or it is normally considered as in they have been born without having a choice, okay? Their parents participated in the elections, and undoubtedly they have been born into that, and they did not have a choice. But where you do have a choice, we have to understand that because of that choice and that right that has been given to us, that we must also strategically participate in the process. You will find that generally young persons are very opposed to Loftus. A majority of young persons are what you call not politically inclined, you know. Most times you see young persons participating in elections, there must be some sort of, there must be some sort of benefit, or there must be some sort of external drive. They intrinsically, they do not want to participate, because they often find that through their observation, after the election process has occurred, their needs are on the back burner, whereas other things are being brought forward in terms of the development agenda. So they are not wrong to not want to participate. However, what I can say on this occasion, where we see ourselves not growing beyond the stage, or rather the expectations that we had are not being met, then it almost means that we have to sort of wake up and say, but hey, if I do not take charge, or if I do not participate, then undoubtedly we will return to the sort of status quo. And that is where young persons, and I'm appealing to young persons. In all cases, people know that I have been involved with the ruling party for 20 years. And seemingly I've been considered as the bright morning star, always advocating on behalf of my leaders and ensuring that wherever I am, their stated intentions and policies are being brought to the nation, however much or little, and whichever role that I have played. Now, as a young person, I consider myself as being the sacrificial lamb, on the basis that even though I formed and was part of the hierarchy and rubbing shoulders with the leaders of the day, I too recognize that we were not on a development path which would take care of my peers. And you know, in the Kalinago territory, I told that to some young men the other day. I say, guys, I really got just disturbed by me running around on those GAs and watching my partners and them on the block with saddened faces. So rather than continuing to participate in that process, I got off this high horse and went down on the ground where I am presently, just so that I can continue my efforts and to build from the ground up. Because if you know as a young person that to some that you're not empowered to any great extent, You have a small business idea and you don't feel that it can go anywhere because you're not receiving funding or the likes or even the attention that you require. Your children are without. You can tell that your parents are struggling and your grandparents essentially are the ones who have faced sort of on the earth. It means therefore that what you are seeing are the signs by which you now must actively participate and change and actively want to change your environment and change your future. Now, if you consider Dominica's political process or the world over, Dominica is not immune to that. It is merely a matter of physics. What goes up must come down. Now, I have followed political parties dating way back to our inception, and I often refer to Dominica as a republic. And if I ever get the opportunity that can be afforded to me by the Most High to lead this country, I will ensure that Dominica is the republic that it should be, on the basis that a republic really affords you a great level of freedom and a freedom of expression. Now, one of the reasons why young persons sort of call away from the political process, because they see people like you and I, when we're in the blazing fire, being attacked, and they wonder to themselves, boy, do you think that I can go through the pressure as Paul Barron and Loftus Dura and the Matt Peltes of the day and the Afi Mates and the Johnson Bostons and the like, who for all the right reasons want to advocate for justice and rights, but must always be looking over the shoulder for a policeman. So they are often really scared that if they sort of raise their voices beyond the level of what the normal rhetoric is, then there's fear of victimization. But I can tell you safely that once you do that which is right, and you continue to do so, it is said that who Jah bless, no man curse, and I'll continue to live by that mantra. Now, I am appealing to Dominicans, you first. My wife and myself said, may we see clearly. We want to see Dominica as it is. Now, when you tear away all the glitter and the fanfare and the sort of propaganda and the normal rhetoric, you will see that we are crippling. You will see blatantly that the country has not progressed beyond any degree of sort of something to be proud of. Now, as a young person, you ask yourself the question, is that the country that you want to grow up in and therefore grow up your family in? Do you feel that you can achieve your goals and your ambitions and your aspirations? Can you? Now, I was speaking to a young man in Portsmouth, and I use that regularly. He sat for a while on the chair, Loftus. We were discussing politics. As you can imagine, wherever I am, politics come up. And he said to himself, he's 26 years, and he said to himself, boy, I waste my time in Dominica, boy. And when the young man said that, it's almost as if I could sort of see every young person saying that at once. And that was the blatant truth. Now, when these young men travel to other islands, these young women travel to other islands, they feel the buzz and the sense of how these countries are doing much better. Now, guess what? These countries are doing with more or less resources than us. For example, the Citizenship by Investment program is through the OECS. And the same mechanism that we use to generate monies, they also use. Okay, I've also noted that Dominica has presented other islands with a number of our blueprints, local government, our education systems, our healthcare, and seemingly they have taken it and done much better. The question is the management of the affairs of the public and the country. That is why young people have to come to understand the management of the affairs of your country. And that is a very significant decision to make. Hence the reason most people say the private sector presents an opportunity which is far more than the public sector. Why? Because if you go to the private sector, you don't get the job done, you go home tomorrow.
True.
Now, sadly, that is not the situation in the public sector. You may have to endure a lot more years. But if you see that the leaders are not achieving the objectives, if you see that they are not achieving the goals and the sort of things they tell us every election, the promises rather, that are made every election means therefore that they're not getting the job done. So what do? Do you continue to willingly participate in ensuring that the management of your affairs of your country is not being done, or you step up and make a change yourself? And that is the question that every young person has to ask yourself. Dominicans, you need to recognize that if for certainty that we are not going beyond any, or we're not achieving, and we're not expanding, and we're not growing, then you have to step into the arena, and then you have to make your voices be heard. Or rather, you can make that one important vote that you have been afforded work. And that is really what confronts us in the political arena in the Commonwealth of Dominica. Now, the reason why I can safely sit down here and tell you that is because I know full well, and I have participated, and I have supported 20 years. Now, I cannot continue. I'm a very, I don't like to brag. My mother say, boy, where you get that brain cell from? I say, well, it had to be from you and daddy, because come on, I'm your child. No, I'm a very learned young man. No, there are many and bright, brilliant, intelligent young Dominicans. In fact, every young Dominican is bright and intelligent, if you ask me. Now, what do? Do you continuously ignore that which you are? Do you ignore your values? Do you ignore your self-worth, your esteem? Do you continue to ignore the fact that your well-being and the quality of your life is not where it should be, as opposed to your peers in the wider region and the world? Do you sort of inflict pain on yourself willingly? Now, if you continue to do so, you might very well accept the consequences. You have to accept the consequences. Now, in my case, I'm sitting here continuously participating, and I said to myself, no, something is wrong, Paul. Something is wrong, because that internal system you have here, this internal drive, which is your heart, and this mega computer, which is your brain, must indicate to you at some point that something is wrong. Now, I have stood apart, and I have made it more than public. I am apart, and I'm saying, no, I will no longer continue to participate and support and sort of get on board this train which is heading for a pitfall, and stand aside. Not only have I chosen to stand aside, but I've chosen now to get back into the arena and sort of diffuse the ticking bomb. You know, to diffuse the ticking bomb, make my voice be heard, and to ensure Dominicans that, guys, we need to do better, or else we will accept all that which come with all the consequences that comes with our decision making. And that is why I never believe that any politician should hold a gun to somebody's head or to try to engage in some degree of bribery or treaty. The decision to vote has to be a sober one. It has to be on the basis that you look at your leaders, you assess them based on their worth, based on their quality, based on their ability to get the job done. And you strip away this favorism, you strip away all this fanfare and mass propaganda, and you look at the individuals and you tell yourselves, can you do the job? Because every Dominican, every young Dominican You are the employers of your leaders. Your leaders, I, Loftus, Paula, the politicians, they are your servant. They are your servants, and you are their boss. And when young people understand that to a greater degree than we already do, then we can see Dominica beginning to take form and beginning to take a different direction. A friend indicated recently that we have collectively 200,000 people if you consider the diaspora network. 200,000 people. There are many Dominicans out there. If you go, don't look at the normal media channels. Search the social media channels and look at what Loftus and I are doing. The voices in the wilderness. Listen to the voices in the wilderness, and you will hear that there are many Dominicans in the diaspora. They're crying for us, Loftus. They are in pain because they themselves, when they come off the plane, cannot see any significant change beyond the point they jump on the taxi and go down through the Central Forest Reserve. And you don't have to tell a diaspora person that. They will know it because they're in rows and they're saying, but wait a while, boy, this sidewalk here, what is that? I fall in this drain here. You understand me? The diaspora people know that when they come home, the same level of sort of luxury and basic amenities that they get in these developed countries is none but existent, but Dominica still exists in the 21st century.
True.
You understand me? And they can tell. And when you hear diaspora complaining about things being bad in Dominica, you have to accept that it is true. Because I travel and I know you travel, many Dominicans travel. And this self-worth as being Dominicans, this self-worth, this patriotism, this recognition that Dominica is a beautiful country that can be developed, that can be transformed. But more importantly, to know that when we make our decisions to vote, that we will not be hunted down for the next 5 years. This freedom of being Dominica has to return. And if you tell me the decision to get involved in politics at the stage that I am now was a decision that was made more than 10 years ago by sitting down on my father's porch with a cup of coffee, and I said, Daddy, Dominica has to return to its former glory. The days when you told me of the milk and honeys, when we had less. When we had less. And that is my plea to Dominicans youth. And you know, we are riding a serious tide and a wave. And this wake-up call that I have gotten here, and I must accredit all of that which I am to God. This wake-up call I'm having here, it is happening simultaneously all around Dominica, and it is also happening within the diaspora network when people recognize that you should not play games with the right to vote and the right to give direction to this country. And I safely believe that undoubtedly we will not enter this sort of fracas and this sort of what I almost call a sort of a gas chamber in the upcoming elections. We would take the right to vote quite serious, young people. Understand that your future is at stake and don't undermine it.
Right.
Thank you.
Brother Baron, let me tell you something. You have me. I doesn't get that spellbound that often. And I'm listening to you there, brother, and trust me, it is really touching a nerve this afternoon. And so you're really firing on all cylinders this afternoon where young persons in Dominica are concerned and the opportunities that can be had for these young persons. So brother, I want to thank you very, very much for such passionate contribution this afternoon. You touch on a point that in the interest of time, I just want to piggyback on it a little bit. It's already what time? 7 minutes to. You touched on a point that I just want to re-echo as it were. And on the point of where you said that about Dominica needing a proper manager. And sometimes when I hear the call by the ordinary person in Dominica, Dominicans are more focused by and large on having a good leader. And I think their call, though it may be in the right direction, their hearts may be yearning for something better, but I believe that call is not prioritized in the right order. Because like you, Brother Barrett, I personally believe what Dominica has been lacking for the past 20-something years and is still lacking is a right manager and not necessarily a right leader. If we have a good manager at the wheel, if we have good managers taking care of Dominica resources, taking care of the 72,000, taking care of the elderly, taking care of the young people, you know, just doing the things that is right, like any good manager would do in a business. Out of proper management, we can now see leaders or that leader, that Moses-like figure emerging from good management. But I think so. We as the Dominican people who have Dominic at heart, I think we need to go back to the drawing board, as it were, and seek to put in position proper managers to manage the CBI program, to manage our resources, to just manage the things of state. And out of that process, that noble process, I must add, voila, we may just get the right leader in the process. Your thoughts before we close?
Well, you're very right to suggest that, you know, the business of the public is a very important one. And you have to understand the public offices and the business of the public exists to benefit Dominicans by large and far. Now, if you chime to an extent on the fact that we require managers of that aspect of life, then that is very right to suggest. Now, if you look at Dominica's political experience, the concern for leaders has always been an ability to win. It's almost like a popularity contest. It's nothing short from running for head boy and head girl. We have to come out of that experience because we have to understand that the decisions that are being made in the respective offices, they affect lives. Now, leaders are not only managers. Leaders must have other very, very important attributes. Empathy. If you as a politician have ever gone to a neighborhood and seen the extent of poverty that exists, and we should not shy away from poverty in Dominica, because I made that recent, and there are many poor people in Dominica. You know what is poverty? Living below $1 a day. And there are many families in this country who don't have $1 a day. If as a leader, you are not affected, or you are not led, or you're not sort of drawn to this degree of suffering that people are experiencing, then certainly you're in the wrong position. Now, leaders, as I've seen, have various qualifications. They have certain accreditation, certain academic skills and the likes. How it is being applied in the public service is what is questionable. I always remember my high school principal would say, but Paul, you have to apply your education. Wrong pegs, square holes. We have heard these things before. When you're giving a man a job to run a ministry, you have to ensure that the man has the capacity to do so. If you're giving somebody to run a department, he has to have the capacity to do so rather than seeking to serve your self-interest. Because when he does not do his job, everybody else does not do their job, because leadership is everything. If the head of the organization seemingly does not do his job, then how motivated will be the staff? Now, I would like to think that we have a public service. I would really love to think so. But the truth is we don't. The current situation confronting the public service is that they are not given the opportunity to do their jobs. Let me tell you something. If I was the prime minister, I would literally sit idly. Not idly as not doing my job, you know, but in careful observation. Because the public service is a well-oiled, well-tuned machinery that can achieve its goal. But when leaders seek to micromanage, you know, by wanting to sort of position offices, position departments to serve a particular interest, when we have problems. And I have respect for all public officers, all senior, all junior public officers. I respect them because these are honorable positions. But they have to be led to do, they have to be allowed to do their jobs.
True, I agree with you, Paul. Paul, let me tell you, I know there's much more in the tank.
Yes,
so I'm going to
sir.
put you on the spot, you know, Paul. You're not escaping. Please publicly commit to wrong too.
You know, I will continue to do what I have been called to do. So yes, I will make myself available.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Paul, before we end any of our programs, you know, that is a civic-minded program where we try to enlighten persons. We try to motivate. We try to inspire. We always end or try to end on a high note in that there's always a call to action aspect of the program. How do you want to wind up the conversation this afternoon? Calling on young persons to get up from that sleep, get up from that slumber, get up from that state they have been for so long and try to better the situation. How?
Well, what I'd like to begin by saying, Mr. Duran, is that it's always better to hope than despair. And in most cases, there are a number of things confronting us as young individuals, and don't believe I am immune to this as a leader. I have a very young family, and I too find myself being extremely challenged at times. But I always embrace hope rather than to despair. I can tell you safely that as young persons, the desire for leaders will always mean that we want to have your best interests upheld. But we also want you to actively participate and also acknowledge your own individual self-worth, your own individual sort of internal being, if you want to put it to a lesser extent. Because I can tell you safely, the moment that you wake each day and you're able to experience a day, it means that you have to get through this, however hard it is, and however difficult you might think of it at times. But by all means, always embrace hope, because there will be a brighter future for Dominican young persons, but you are at the center of that process, and always recognize that much. Thank you.
Yes, Paul, I just want to open Paula's mic now so that she can tell you her parting words before we leave the conversation. Paula, yes.
Yes, Mr. Baron. Mr. Baron, a number of persons on the Facebook page actually saying that we should bring this gentleman back. This was a very excellent guest this afternoon. Well informed, well educated. And a number of persons are also saying they're wondering how many of the youths are listening. Before you leave this afternoon, Mr. Baron, I'm not sure when this was posted, but I did share it on my Facebook page. And it's an article that you wrote on DNO, and I saw it dated the 24th of April, and I did share that. So persons who are interested in reading this article by Mr. Paul Baron, they can go on DNO and search for it, or they can go to my Facebook page and they can be very interested at it. Mr. Baron, they say from small, you can tell what a child will be like. And from small, a young man growing up, like you said, I have known you from since you've been like a boy, young boy. And I want to say, wonderful.
Thank you.
It's been a wonderful afternoon. Number of persons have made their comments here, and they are also saying this is a bold and brave young man. I just wish that a number of youths are listening this afternoon to this program, and if they were not, we are hoping that maybe you can find the forum that where a lot of youths listen to you, especially those that I employ with the NEP and believe that's the end of it. So once again, thank you so very much. And I wish you and your family all the best. Thank you, Mr.
very
Barbuda.
much. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Well, Brother Baron, let me echo Paula's final words to you. Let me thank you very, very much, brother, very profusely, in a profuse way. And I know all the persons there, the pretty close to 200 persons that they are glued now, they would want to thank you personally, but they cannot.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
I have the opportunity, the prestigious opportunity that is to do that on their behalf. So on their behalf, I want to thank you and we'll continue to do good work. I see good things ahead for you. Just keep faith alive. And
thank you, brother.
Great things will work out for you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. God bless.
One love. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, folks. There you had it. Brother Paul Baron, Kalinago descent, indigenous tribe of Dominica. And I can tell you this, brother, I can speak for myself, and I can maybe say that you too can maybe listen to him for hours. But 2 hours, that's all we had with his engagement this afternoon right here on Civic Vibes. And so time is time. But trust me, Paul was like a little dynamo this afternoon. He basically exploded here this afternoon, where the conversation of young people was center. It took center stage, and it was shown under the microscope this afternoon. So those of you who have young persons in your families, the young persons who are on the live, like Mr. Jaira, Hector, and others, please share the live, because young persons like yourself, they need to be motivated, they need to be inspired in order that our lovely country, the Kalinago people, where Brother Baron is from, call it Whitey Kubuli. And so that Whitey Kubuli block, that rock that is, can be the best country in the Eastern Caribbean. So we are now moving into the second gear, the second tier, as it were, of our program this afternoon. We already have our brother from Antigua and Barbuda, Mr. Ian Hughes by name, better known as Magic in the business. And so he too, he's gonna work some magic for us this afternoon. But we're gonna hear from him as we take a break now, and we'll be back in just a bit. Take a break, we'll be back in just a bit. Thank you for your ears and eyes. We're gonna do this one from Bobby Wine.
Expressing what they
That is the line right there, Dominicans and those of you viewing. We are indeed fighting for freedom. Freedom we are fighting for. Let's continue.
Citizens, they follow up the guys, the question. What was the purpose of the liberation? When we talk about peaceful transition. What is the purpose of the Constitution? When the government disrespect the Constitution. What is my freedom of expression? When you charge me because of my expression. Look what you're doing to this nation. By teaching the future generation. See our leaders become misleaders, and see our mentors become tormentors. Freedom fighters become dictators. They look at the youth and say we are disruptors. We are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for freedom. Every papa tomorrow to just don't do. We are fighting for freedom. My dad was in the Kabum Karamoja. We are fighting for freedom. Oh, imagine you don't go. We are fighting for freedom. It's a revelation for the generation. Whether you are doctor or a farmer, whether you are teacher or policeman, could be a tax driver or a student, could be a lawyer, could be a soldier. We are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for freedom. But you got we are fighting for freedom.
All right, yes, Dominicans, indeed, we are fighting for freedom. That is a song sung by our Ugandan opposition leader. At the end of today's program, or tonight's program, we're gonna hear a speech that he gave sometime last month. Very inspiring, very motivating, brother known as Bobby Wine in the musical business. But he's from Uganda, and he's the opposition leader. Under tremendous pressure from Museveni, I must add, but he's toiling on. All right, so please stay with us. We'll be having that all-important speech from Brother Bobby Wine at the end of our program this evening. Let me now move across to another segment of the program, and let me say a special good evening to Brother Magic. How are you, bro?
Good evening to you, to Paul as well, and to your many listeners. It's, always an honor to be asked to have a conversation with you guys as you try to inform the people of Dominica, even if they live in Dominica or they live abroad, to let them, keep up with what's happening in Dominica. So thank you so very much, and thank you for allowing me to present what's happening here in Antigua and Barbuda to the people of Dominica and to your many listeners. Thank you, and viewers as well. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, well, Brother Ian Hughes, better known in the journalism world as Brother Magic. It's always nice to have you on board. You're always a fiery guy, and so we expect some of that fiery magic, as it were, this afternoon. Thank you. Let me just let Paula chime in to say a hand hello before we get into the meat of your presentation. Paula, yes.
Mr. Magic, good evening.
A pleasant evening to you, Paula.
And how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Nice to have you again once more.
It's an honor.
Looking forward for a great conversation here this evening.
Sure, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Paula. Thank you indeed. Brother Magic, let me, give our viewers and listeners just an idea of some of the things. I know you will go much deeper, but I don't know if you want to start there, but we are hearing tomorrow, Antigua and Barbuda, like others in the region, Dominica as well, will be celebrating or going through what we know as Labor Day, meaning a day for all the workers, when traditionally workers find themselves in some kind of celebration for work done throughout the year, and just commemorating that day as their day. What is about to take place in your neck of the wood as it relates to that day and workers in Antigua and Barbuda?
Well, tomorrow there is a protest march that is organized by the Antigua Workers Union, and the Antigua Workers Union, they're the union associated with the opposition party. There are two major unions in Antigua and Barbuda. The Antigua Trades and Labor Union, they are aligned to the ruling Antigua Labor Party, and the Antigua Workers Union, they're aligned to the United Progressive Party, which is the main opposition. Tomorrow, there is a protest march, and the theme of the march is workers in Antigua and Barbuda have no confidence in the government, which is the administration led by Gaston Brown. It's a Labour Party government, it's a Labour government, and as you know, normally a Labour government would stand for a government that looks for workers. But incidentally, on the Gaston Brown, there has been an assault, so to speak, on unions in Antigua and Barbuda. As a matter of fact, even the Antigua Trades and Labor Union came under fire by Gaston Brown and his administration because they had come out against the mandate, the vaccine mandate. And they got a tongue lashing from Gaston Brown. He even suggested that workers should stop paying union dues and move away from being unionized. So, you know, and then there was a whole shakeup of the union, and there are some who claim that persons were handpicked to run the union the way that the administration wants it to be run, totally against what workers are accustomed to or should be accustomed to. It is about, you know, the rights of workers and not what the administration wants from workers. And, you know, in Antigua and Barbuda today, I don't know, it's tough being a worker in this environment in Antigua and Barbuda, especially coming out of, you know, the COVID pandemic and the vaccine mandate, where persons who decided not to be vaccinated were sent home without pay, and children who didn't want to be vaccinated were sent home from school. They weren't able to go to school. And there was this total breakdown of, and it's not in Antigua alone. I must say this, you know, this is a worldwide phenomenon, so to speak, where workers came under fire for not getting the vaccine and dealing with the vaccine mandate. However, you would recognize that it seems like even though COVID is very much still with us, they have reverted to going back to work and, you know, going to public places without the things that are required, even traveling, all that. But there are workers still today who, having been sent home for 2 months, now that they're back to work, they still have not been compensated for the 2 months that they have, you know, that they were out of office. There are also a number of persons who are disgruntled. The late workers are one. They have been sent home, you know, the collapse of Leah, they have been sent home without pay. There have been a number of closures of businesses in Antigua and Barbuda, and the workers have been sent home without pay. Jolly Beach, in particular, one of the major hotels in Antigua and Barbuda, that closed down, and the workers are still waiting for their compensation. There is the airport services, the people at the airport services, they were sent home without pay. There have been a number of protests across Antigua and Barbuda, mainly in the public sector, persons agitating for payment, overtime, and increase of pay. And they have not been addressed, some all the way back from 2015. Those concerns have not been addressed until they take protest action. And it seems as if the administration has come to this decision that If you don't protest for what is yours, you're not going to get it. So under the theme, no confidence in the administration by the Antigua Workers Union and the UPP, that should have some traction tomorrow. I must say the Antigua Trades and Labor Union and the supporters of the Labor Party, they're going to have a different scenario, I'm quite sure. Traditionally, they are the two fractions. They gather in different areas in the country, and then they move on to a location. The Labour Party, they go to Fort James, and they have a party. Well, they're going to have a concert tomorrow evening after they rally in the streets. And the UPP and the ATNL and the AWU, Antigua Workers Union, they will do their protest march, and then the UPP, and I'm quite sure members of the Workers Union, they go down to Fry's Beach, where they congregate and have some form of activity as well. There, persons, music, there's a lineup of artists that will be performing and stuff like that. So that is what is happening tomorrow for Labor Day.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for kind of going a bit much deeper into that aspect, what is likely to take place tomorrow. But, yours truly have eyes and ears for the length and breadth of the region. And so in preparation for today's program with you, I got on the ground from some sources in Antigua and Barbuda that some persons are viewing it as sort of a hijack situation, where it's the political parties in opposition that are basically hosting these protest actions tomorrow. Is that fair comment?
Here is the thing. We have a situation in Antigua and Barbuda that is and let me just be clear, and in the form of transparency, I'm not very fond with this administration, not at all fond of this administration. And I've voiced my opinion on a number of issues in Antigua and Barbuda in the past, and I continue to do so. At the same time, though, facts are facts. And the issue is very clear in Antigua and Barbuda, whether you support the government or not. The situation, it's not hidden. There is a situation here in the country where pensioners, for the past number of years under this administration, since they came to office in 2014, pensioners have been paid late every month. As a matter of fact, they may be 2 months behind in payment. There are many persons who are of the view, I included, that there is no reason for that other than this administration is just so inept and are unwilling to do the right thing. There are a number of persons who have been, as I said, agitating for either increase in salary, either back pay that they've worked and they were supposed to be paid and weren't paid, overtime pay. I mean, there are persons who at the government quarry, there are persons who are owed up to $300,000. I mean, one individual by the government, $300,000. They're the workers at ABS, the main radio station. They took industrial action. They won at the industrial court. And the administration, rather than pay the persons what they are owed, they have moved and they're at present trying to remove the panel at the industrial court. The late workers, as I said earlier, they continue to ask for payment. The Jolly Beach workers, there have been workers at Public Works who have been agitated for money for their pay. They're just on Thursday, the bus drivers who take the children to school, they down tools in protest for monies owed to them. These are facts. I'm not making these things up. These things did happen.
But in defense of Mr. Gaston Brown's government, I normally listen to your radio stations in Antigua and Barbuda, and on countless occasions he came and he said it's not a matter of these persons are not getting paid or they may not get paid. It's a situation of, especially after the COVID situation, kind of prioritizing which payment to make first, which payment to make next. But in his defense, I heard him said in a very categoric manner, it's not a matter of they will not get paid. It's just a matter of when they will get paid.
Well, you see, that is an interesting statement, because here are the facts. After the 2020, after we went through COVID, the revenue before COVID, let's put this, before COVID, since 2014 until COVID, our revenue that the government received was $800 million per year. That was the average revenue. In 2020, the year of COVID, the Prime Minister Gaston Brown, he came on, he said, you know, we did great despite or in spite of COVID, because our revenue was $750 million. No, they're blaming COVID. However, these lack of payments go way back before COVID. These are non-payments since 2015. So what's the excuse? COVID, our first case of COVID in Antigua and Barbuda was March of 2020. So we cannot say our finances were in problems because of COVID before COVID. And even after COVID, according to the finance minister, we only suffered a $50 million hit. We only got hit $50 million. Because instead of our $800 million a year in revenue, we collected $750 million. I mean, it does not add up.
That's from the passport program, to be clear.
Excuse me?
The monies you said 50 million short. That's what program that was derived from?
No. What I'm saying, our annual revenue, the government annual revenue is an average of 850, and in the year of COVID, we collected 750. We have done, according to the Minister of Finance, who is Gaston Brown, we have done very well. So COVID did not affect us financially, according to him, like it did most other places. That's what he said. So I can only go according to him. See, one of the problems we have in Antigua and Barbuda, my brother, is this. There is a lack of transparency. We have the Minister of Finance, he just tout numbers, and there is no way to check these numbers. Take, for instance, when COVID hit, the junior Minister of Finance, Lennox Weston, he said, oh, no problem. COVID is not going to hit us too badly because we actually have $500 million set aside for any problems we may have. The junior Minister of Finance made that statement. When COVID hit, and people say, well, okay, hotels are locking down, businesses are suffering, you know, let's provide the people some stimulus. the Minister of Finance said, well, we don't have any money. And he discounted what Lennox Weston said, and Lennox Weston then retracted what he said. I mean,
you're joking.
No, this is, and listen, I'm telling you, if you live in Antigua and Barbuda, you would think that you're living in a time warp, or you're living in some kind of fantasy island, or a nightmare island, I should say. Because I will tell you, even, okay, when the war in Ukraine, the so-called war in Ukraine started, we raised in Antigua and Barbuda, the Minister of Finance, the administration, they were talking about what they're going to do, because obviously the oil prices are going to be impacted. The CEO of West Indies Oil came out and said, listen, we're going to be okay for a while, because we have, I mean, I don't know if you know about the Antigua West Indies Oil Company, which is incidentally owned by the people of Antigua and Barbuda. It's mainly a storage facility. So they buy refined fuel, they store them, they even sell Dominica fuel. Now, the CEO said, no problem, we have storage, we have fuel stored, so the impact from the war isn't going to hit us immediately. As a matter of fact, we also have suppliers who are not going to be impacted. The CEO came out, let's say on a Thursday. By the Saturday, the Prime Minister said, no, that's not so. We don't have any storage, and we're going to have to increase the price of fuel. And they increased the price of fuel $3.50. Not even a week after the war started, just about a week after the war started. So when you say that didn't happen with Lennox Weston, I can tell you it didn't just happen with Lennox Weston, it also happened with the West Indies Oil situation, where we went out, and the government, that is, and they put a plan in place to increase the storage capacity at West Indies Oil. Now that that is increased, and we thought that we had a lot of fuel stored, the CEO is saying, well, we don't really own the stored fuel. The stored fuel is owned by a third party. Even though West Indies oil is owned by Antigua and Barbuda. So there is no transparency in the things that they do, the things that affect the people of Antigua and Barbuda. And I think that the theme of no confidence in this administration is certainly well fitted. The workers having no confidence in this administration is certainly well fitted, notwithstanding what Gaston Brown would say. Or, as a matter of fact, too, it appears as if only Gaston Brown speaks for the administration. Nobody else speaks. It's like a dictatorship in Antigua and Barbuda. And if a minister comes out and make a statement, a minute or two, 5 minutes later, a day later, Gaston Brown will come out and discount everything that minister would have said. So in Antigua and Barbuda, we have a dictatorship, a one-man government run by Gaston Brown.
Well, Dr. Magic Hughes, I know you are one always, tell it like it is. And so basically we from that end, Civic Vibes end, would also want to chime in here in terms of giving you, because the conversation we're having is sort of cross-pollination, as it were. You feed us and we feed you. And so from our end in Dominica, well, by now you should know the government of Roosevelt Skerrit, that is the man who sits in the chair as Prime Minister. a lot of Dominicans, in terms of transparency where he is concerned, a lot of Dominicans have doubts about it. There was once in terms of his public pronouncements and the CBI program that Dominica have from since 1993. He came out and said, after a number of persons, including the opposition leader in Dominica, asked for some clarification on some numbers where our passports are concerned. Roosevelt said that when these numbers are tabulated, he will get back to the nation and give some proper counting. And that is like pretty close to 5 years now, Paula? Right? 5 years and counting. And so what you are saying there, Paul and I, we are basically shaking our head in that Loftus Jira normally say, looking at Gaston Brown and Roosevelt Skerritt, they're basically made out of the same khaki material, but it's just a different shade of brown.
Well, let me just say this about the CBI program, because many people...
And incidentally, his surname ends in Brown, Gaston Brown.
And let me say this. When Gaston Brown and his administration came into office in 2014, they came in on a wave of opposition towards the CBI program. Don't sell our passports. The Citizen by Investment program was touted as, oh, crazy, don't do, you can't sell our passport. Our passport is almost like sacred. Immediately, Gaston Brown got into office and they started selling passports like it was like hot bread. Now, when they got into office, we enjoyed visa-free travel to Canada. Because of the CBI program, that came under fire by Canada. And Canada issued a number of warnings to Antigua and Barbuda saying, listen, you got to revise your CBI program because people are slipping through the cracks, coming here without visa, and we're not going to take that chance. Those warnings were ignored by the administration. As a matter of fact, we had a Canadian who was running our CBI program, and he issued a number of warnings as well and recommendations to the administration. Those were ignored, and he also got a tongue lashing from Gaston Brown and was sent packing. He left the program, and not long after he left the program, Antigua and Barbuda lost visa-free access or travel to Canada. So Antiguans who wish to go to Canada now have to go through a visa program. Everybody in Dominica and in Antigua and Barbuda must understand this. The Schengen provinces in the EU are also threatening to shut down visa-free travel to Antigua and Barbuda and a number of the countries. I think Dominica, Grenada are also included, because of a number of persons who fell through the cracks. Persons who have been indicted for money laundering, persons who have been indicted for drug smuggling, who have our passports. It doesn't go down well with these states. And listen, I understand. I was in the financial sector, and I was in the gaming sector, and I know what the US did to Antigua and Barbuda with the gaming situation. I know this, and I know that there are some of these countries, especially the United States, who seemingly come against us once they see these small states making money. I know this. I'm not naive about this. However, when it comes to the CBI program, here, these are facts. We have had at least 4 or 5 individuals who are either have been sentenced for inappropriate behavior, money laundering is usually number 1, or drug smuggling, who have had our passports. We have even had one individual who claimed that she told the person selling these passports, listen, I'm on the investigation. And they still went ahead and got her a passport, Antigua and Barbuda passport. We have Peter Verdi, who is right now sentenced in Germany for what they call the tariff that they should have received for the global warming thing. He had this program with your what you call it, the footprint, the emissions footprint. He got caught up in some shenanigans in Antigua and Barbuda. One of our MPs were held up in England and questioned because they have him on record, on a recording, trying to get a bribe or trying to bribe Peter Verdi. It's on record. As a matter of fact, he was, quote unquote, kicked out of the Labour Party by Gaston Brown for that said offense. Now, let's be very clear. These are allegations. He has not gone to court and done anything, but I'm only repeating what Gaston Brown has said. Gaston Brown has stated, Asset Michael, who is the MP involved in this, he said the evidence is so damning that he's willing to put him out of his party. Now, Asset Michael, incidentally, is fighting expulsion from the Labour Party. But those are matter of record. Now, Gaston Brown himself is implicated in the Odebrecht scandal. There are allegations that one of the lawyers for the Odebrecht family stated, listen, we paid a bribe to a high-level official in Antigua and Barbuda because the bank that most of the money is ran through for the Odebrecht scandal was in Antigua and Barbuda. So these guys said, we paid a high-level official 3 million euros to hold documents from the investigators. And the Gaston Brown name popped up on the radar.
What is the name of that scandal, Brother Magic?
The Odebrecht scandal out of Brazil. It's only the biggest financial scandal in the history of the world. Okay. And the bank was here in Antigua and Barbuda. And there are serious allegations that a Dominican is involved in that whole situation. I'm not going to state the name at this moment, but I am quite sure when the dust is cleared, you will see and recognize who that individual is in the Odebrecht scandal, which has named specifically Gaston Brown. Now, here is the thing. When the scandal broke, Gaston Brown admitted that they got this money, this bribe money, but it was sent back. Now, many people question how they could send it back and who did they send it back to. So there was a call for a commission of inquiry into the Odebrecht scandal. So, you know, because incidentally again, the leader of the opposition in Antigua and Barbuda, Harold Lovell, he was working for one of the principals of the said bank in Antigua and Barbuda. So when it was said that an attorney, a high-level attorney or a well-known attorney in Antigua and Barbuda is associated to the Odebrecht scandal, Gaston Brown came out and said it was Harold Lovell. Harold Lovell denied vehemently that he has anything to do with any Odebrecht scandal, and he called for a commission of inquiry. Now, a commission of inquiry is called by the Governor General. Gaston Brown is on record that no Governor General can call no inquiry in his administration. That's a matter of record. And the Governor General, who is a former Minister of Tourism in Antigua and Barbuda, a noted medical practitioner, and the son of a former minister in the Labour Party, Rodney Williams. His father was Ernest Williams. He cowered to Gaston Brown. He never called a commission of inquiry. He never called for an investigation so that the name of Antigua and Barbuda could be cleared in what is happening with the Odebrecht scandal. Now, it gets even hotter.
Before you go to the hotter aspect of this program, can you, Magic, go into a little more detail so that, or to the benefit of our viewers and listeners, as to how that program was supposed to be benefiting you guys in Antigua and Barbuda? Just how?
Well, okay. As you know, the CBI program was initially a citizen by investment program. And the citizen by investment program is not a new program. It is a program that has been around for a number of years across the globe. It's not just citizen by investment. A lot of these quote unquote big countries or first world countries, even athletes, they induce athletes who are really good to become citizens so that that country can benefit. Now, the approach was to get involved with the CBI program or the Citizen by Investment program. And initially, here is what it was supposed to do. If persons came to the country and invested in the country, let's say to build hotels, to build anything that is going to add to the employment stock, to employ people, like serious investments, then they have access to Antigua and Barbuda passports. That is the main thrust of the whole Citizen by Investment program. The United Progressive Party was in office when they introduced that program, and it was introduced in 2013. I think they had one investor, the United Progressive Party, when they lost office in 2014.
Yes, I can confirm. I can just confirm what you said in terms of the one investor, in that we had a representative here sometime 2-3 weeks back, and she did confirm when they were booted out of office, only one investor that was generated under that program. Yeah, so you're right, you're on point.
Right, and if you look what the program has done for St. Kitts and Nevis, even though it's under a lot of scrutiny right now, there have been a number of hotels built via that program. And there have been a number of investments in St. Kitts and Nevis via that program. And not just St. Kitts and Nevis. You can look at the program throughout the universe, throughout the globe. You will see what has happened in different parts of the world. In Antigua and Barbuda, though, there has not been one tangible investment linked to the CB, to the Citizen by Investment program. It has just been a whole-scale sale of passports. So they pay, you get a passport, you don't have to invest. And in 2017, around there, 2017, 2018, the government, the administration boasted that, yeah, we're doing so well with the Citizen by Investment program that $2 billion worth of economic activity has come through the Citizen by Investment program. So people were like, wow, great. The thing is, where is it? We are not seeing the fruits of the $2 billion worth of economic activity. As a matter of fact, with $2 billion worth of economic activity, the administration since 2014 has already borrowed over $2 billion. They have received on average $800 million a year in revenue. Now, 2014 to 20, let's go to 2021, because 2022 is not completed as yet. You're talking about what? 8 by 7. Your math might be better than mine, but that sounds something like 56.
Yeah, 56.
That's $5.6 billion. $2 billion from the Citizen by Investment program, that's $7 billion. $2 billion in loans, that's $9 billion. They had this deal with a firm called the Yeater Group, and the administration boasted that, you know, we're going to have $200 million a year pumped into our economy. That has not happened. And we heard just a couple of weeks ago that Yeater was sold to who we don't know. So there's so much that is being talked about, money here, money there, but it's not tangible. And I see we're running, I can't believe it's already 6:51.
It's already that time, for sure.
Right. One of the biggest issue, not the only issue, but one of the major issues affecting Antiguans and Barbudans today is the manipulation of the water program in Antigua and Barbuda. And I say the manipulation of the water program because it is being said that Antigua and Barbuda is suffering from a drought. So we do not have water. So there is a water problem. From my standpoint, we do not have a water problem. We have a manipulation of the water, and I explain why. Every single day, there are tons of trucks. There are at least 50, 60 trucks lined up, filling up with millions of gallons of water, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water to sell to consumers in Antigua and Barbuda, while we are unable to get that same water, which is being pumped from the main desalinating plant, which is supposed to distribute the water through the pipes. They're taking the water, putting it in trucks, and selling to people at a higher rate than what you would get or what you would pay for the water in your pipes. So if you are unable to buy the water from the trucks, you don't have water because the administration is not sending the water through the tap. They're sending it through trucks to be sold at a much higher rate to those who have the money so to do. Now here is, to make things worse, they have, because of the situation over the years with the drought situation in Antigua and Barbuda, the former administration, they sought to address it by building a number of storage tanks in strategic locations throughout the country. They built, most of those tanks were built by 2013 and 2014. They lost office in 2014. 8 years later, in spite of the drought situation, in spite of the fact that the administration came into office and had these 5, 6 water tanks already built, or maybe 4 tanks already built, they refused to attach the tanks. They refused to fill the tanks with water so that people can get water through their tap. So the tanks are just there, empty, unattached, and the people who can afford to buy water, and who can't buy, do without water. So people are here in Antigua and Barbuda without water for sometimes weeks. You can't take a shower in Antigua and Barbuda in certain areas. Almost indicative of how we grew up in the 60s, where we went to get water at a standpipe and we threw water up to bed. That is the situation in Antigua and Barbuda today, with an administration that took out a loan for $170 million from the Antigua Commercial Bank to specifically address the situation of water. That has not happened to date.
Wow. Brother Magic, I'm hearing you talking about you guys' water plight in Antigua and Barbuda. And we too in Dominica, we are facing similar plight where energy is concerned, because after a number of millions of dollars was spent on what plant is that, Paula? A geothermal plant. My brother Magla would say geothermal. On a geothermal plant. Up till now, Brother Magic, we have not, as the people of Dominica, received anything in terms of benefit, and millions of dollars has already gone down the drain. But in terms of just bringing to bear on you as well, as we must bring this program to an end in just a bit in the interest of time, we also have a situation in Dominica that is, quote unquote, the lively situation now that I must bring you up to speed on, so that you, in terms of the media, having connection in the media over there, can at least spread the facts of that matter as well. We also have in Dominica, where, like you, because I heard you spoke a while ago, and if I were to underpin what you said in like one word, well, 2 words rather, is that there's a great need for greater transparency in Antigua and Barbuda. We too in Dominica, presently, the most liveliest action that is being done in Dominica now is where Dr. Thompson Fontaine, an economist by profession, was for the past week being held before the courts in Dominica over a charge of obstruction of police, of doing the duty, and as well incitement to commit violence. That was and still remains a very live situation in Dominica, where Dr. Thompson Fontaine is now on bail for 75,000 EC and other conditions that are related to his conditions of bail. The very interesting thing about us, or one of the very interesting thing about that scenario, is that those charges stem back from 2017, where the Dominica Labour Party said that the party of which Dr. Thompson Fontaine is part of, the United Workers' Party, they and other Dominicans had a protest, had a meeting in town. And it was said after that, or it is alleged after that, that these people wanted to overthrow the Roosevelt Skerritt administration with a truck. Investigators were brought in to help in that matter. The investigation concluded that they did not find no evidence, no tangible evidence rather, that these people really wanted to overthrow a government by whatever means, falleth for a truck. But the hunting, the persecution and prosecution of some of these members still continue as we going on. And Dr. Thompson Fontaine, as I was mentioning earlier, he is one of the latest victims of that matter. I can speak to you more in detail as to some of the situation that's around that, but I just wanted you to apprise you of that so that you can kind of have your media people over there call even Dr. Thompson Fontaine, who cannot say much about the details, but he can kind of paint a broad picture as to why, how the details about that situation. You can call a number of persons in Dominica as well who can kind of afford you the opportunity, and other media houses in Antigua to kind of lay the details in a much more factual manner. I was listening this afternoon as well to one of your stations in Antigua, where that matter was dealt with, in part. And I can tell you, wherever the host of that radio station got his information, some of what I heard there this afternoon is the furthest from the truth. And so I would just want to implore you now to kind of lay the foundation in Antigua and Barbuda so that that host, that radio station, or other radio stations can call in to various persons in Dominica who are quite avid with the situation that can provide some more information on that.
Well, I'll tell you this, and let me just go quickly. Let me deal with this first, as it pertains to the media in Antigua and Barbuda. It is very clear that even within a number of, look, we have basically one media house that is supposed to be down the middle. Even though the owner, one of the owners of that media house is a member of the opposition, the United Progressive Party, but they took over that media house, which was quote unquote down the middle radio station or media house that told it as it is. However, we have noticed that certain hosts at that radio station tend to go into gray areas. They tend to give the people Labour Party talking points. Okay. Now, when it comes to getting information to the public, the Labour Party has been very manipulating in that aspect, because at one time they controlled all media houses in Antigua and Barbuda, the Labour Party. They're really not accustomed to free media, and they continue to ensure that wherever there's supposed to be free media, they would get involved in that. Now, see these areas of like your geothermal and the lack of transparency is none different than Antigua and Barbuda. And it's amazing how similar we are, because this administration, they claim some $27 million in 2 solar farms. That was brought in by the same Peter Verdi, who is now convicted in the UK. And after spending $27 million, they claim that, you know what, we didn't buy the batteries. So they can't, you spend $27 million US and you don't have the storage capacity to hold the energy. And there is nothing for that. There is nothing, there is no proper investigation as to why and how that could have happened. In Parliament, there was a back and forth between two members of the ruling administration, Gaston Brown and Asset Michael, because Gaston Brown accused Asset Michael of being so corrupt. And Asset Michael in Parliament said, well, we will find out where you got your monies from, because before 2014, you had nothing. That's very, very interesting, because Gaston Brown is touted today as one of the richest men in Antigua and Barbuda. After 8 years in office, he purchased a plot of land on the beach for $600,000 US. He built a house on that plot. He claimed he got a loan from an offshore bank to build that house. I know he never got no loan from that offshore bank to build that house. So there's still speculation as to where did he get the money to build a house that costs a couple of $1 million. And that house, incidentally, he has rented it out to an investor who they just gave, like they waived all the duties and taxes for life.
Yes.
To an investor.
I've been following
So
that
the
story
Western,
I was just telling you, I've been following that story as well. His house and the rental of that property to that investor. But Brother Hughes, we are out of time. Basically, we are going past our time. I know there's many more stuff that you can put on the table. I still have to give Paul her final words here, and we still want to take 1 or 2 comments from the live feed that is coming in here, because they too, these people are part and parcel of the conversation as well. Omar Monel is saying, couldn't the WASCO invest in water tanks as well? Margot LaRoque wrote here, Skerrit building his 3rd mansion and he is still getting applauded by Roseau streets and sidewalks hazard. Antoine George reads, right, sorry, are we seeing the people whom they sold our passports to? Are they coming to invest in our country? Same thing is deeper than selling our passports. Imagine that it's only the whole Caribbean that sort of thing is happening. Viva Mamu is watching as well, and she's asking a very important question. Final comments on that in terms of that question, Brother Magic. Would you blame, after having said all that, in terms of the corruption, the lack of transparency, and the like, would you blame the leaders or the people for where we are today in terms of poor governance across our region?
It's interesting. It's interesting. Both are to be blamed. I tell you why. Listen. I have called for total shutdown of Antigua and Barbuda. I've been calling for that for years. Everybody down tools until this administration decides to be transparent and just show us exactly what is happening. There's just too much. The MO of this administration has been, look, enrich yourself. That's a public statement by Gaston Brown. I told my ministers to enrich themselves. That to me is saying corruption is legalized. Because as a public officer, if you enrich yourself as a public officer, you can only do it by stealing the people's money. Because there's no other way. That's point blank. But he has said, that's it. We are going to enrich ourselves. And you have seen, after following that statement, these ministers who are not building $1 million mansions, they now have, who don't have radio station, have investment all over the country. And these are people who had practically nothing before getting into office. so that enrichment scheme is well on its way. So I blame the people for not coming out and just, you know, not just protesting, but deciding that enough is enough. I blame the administration, because when you are entrusted with handling the affairs of a people, you should do just that. It is sacred. A public officer holds a sacred office, and you are accountable to the people. And when you take that lightly, it is not something that you should be applauded. You should look. Let me tell you. Let me close with this. Gaston Brown accused Asad Michael, a member of his government, for paying the director of public prosecution. He accused him of that, of bribing the DPP. They said Asad Michael had a case in court, and Asad Michael said, and I quote, "I have irrefutable evidence that the chief magistrate is corrupt." The chief magistrate, she recused herself from his case and said she was threatened by Asad Michael. You know where the chief magistrate is today? She is now the acting DPP, because the DPP was found in Jamaica of inappropriate behavior when he was in Jamaica. He resigned, and the administration did not accept his resignation. They put him on administrative leave and placed the chief magistrate, John Walsh, as the acting DPP. There's a cesspool of corruption in Antigua and Barbuda. I can speak for the next year, every single day for hours, on the corruption that is happening in Antigua and Barbuda. And let's not forget, we still have not had an independent investigation into the alleged kidnapping of Mehul Choksi, who claimed he was kidnapped by police in Antigua and taken to Dominica, and who was sent back to Antigua for medical reasons, and he's still not sent back to Dominica to face the charges of coming to Dominica illegally. I'm not hearing you, Loftus.
Sorry. My bad. I was on mute. I was just telling you thank you for your words here, and was telling the listeners before that that is the kind of magic that we know. Expect some fiery presentation / contribution from you, and you sure did justice to our expectation this afternoon. Let me move across now, in the interest of time, to have Paula say her final words, her parting words to you, Brother Magic. Trust me, we cannot say everything this afternoon, and so we have to leave somewhere they are, and we'll get back to them in a subsequent program, that is. But thank you nonetheless. Paula. Yes.
I think Paula might be muted.
Thank you, Mr. Magic. You're on all 4 cylinders this afternoon, as usual. Mr. Magic,
thank you so very much.
From where Lofty actually left out, in the interest of time, you know, Mr. Duran spoke about the increase in electricity bill here, but what he did not say, it's how much that our light was increased by. we have a 30% increase in our light bill. And like he rightly said, geothermal energy was the talk for a very long time. Lots of money had been spent on that project, and we had not seen a completion of that. Also, on the case of Thompson Fountain, which he said that we won't really discuss, but just for your information, the day in question that Dr. Thompson Fountain, actually these bogus charges that have been placed upon him, the day in question, Dr. Thompson Fountain was at one of our well-known and popular radio station, Q95. So for the records, the increase in our light bills, 30%, and the charges against Dr. Thompson Fountain, which have been bogus charges, the day in question, he was at the radio station. Anyway, in the interest of time, like I said, Mr. Magic, it have always been a pleasure having you. Till next time, enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you. It's an honor. And the Gaston Brown administration does the same to opposition members in Antigua and Barbuda as well. They've been hunted down and taken to the courts. And even when they win their case, they appeal the judgment. So they seem to be running parallel in Antigua and Barbuda and Dominica. They seem to be following the same playbook. But thank you guys so very much. It's always an honor to speak to you guys and the people of Dominica, and for those living in Dominica and for those living abroad. There's an election looming in Antigua and Barbuda. It is widely believed that the fact that we haven't had the election yet is because Gaston Brown and his administration, they've lost favor with the people, and the notion is he's running out the clock until 2023 when it is duly the time, you know, to call the election. Yes.
Okay.
Next
Brother
year.
Magic,
I think March next year.
March next year, it is constitutionally due.
Constitutionally due 2023, yes.
Okay. Well, you sure wave the magic one this evening here with us. Brother Magic, thank you very much. And we wish you all the best.
Thanks to you. And as you know, Dominica is my home. My mom is from Dominica. So, you know, I feel akin to Dominica. So thank you so very much. And to all the people of Dominica, have a good one.
All right, brother. Thank you. Much love.
You're welcome. All right.
All righty. All right, Dominicans, yes, those of you who are here in Dominica, those of you abroad, we want to thank you very much for staying the course, as it were, with us from the 4 o'clock hour this afternoon. It is now 7:15. We have one more, just very first, one more segment. It's like about 15 minutes. So we'll sure get you out of here just around the 7:30 hour. But we have to play a 13 to 15 minutes delivery from the opposition leader in Uganda. He goes by, he's a musician by the way, very keen with the young persons in Uganda, and he made and continued to make waves in the political arena, standing up to another dictator that is siding with Putin. He normally is seen with Putin, especially as the war broke out with Ukraine. Museveni, that is, he has been in for 30-something years now, but Bobby Wine has pledged his life, as it were, to bring better for his people. So we're now going to take a little break before we close and play a speech for you, a very motivating speech, a very inspirational speech. I want to thank my brother, Norman Shillingford. I'm a follower of Bobby Wine, but Norman Shillingford is the one that sent me that very motivating speech yesterday. So brother Shillingford, take kudos for what I'm going to play now. Thank you very much. Let us see if we can get that speech up on your screen. We're going to share that in just a bit.
My check, 1, 2. See how our leaders become misleaders, and see how our mentors become tormentors. Freedom fighters became dictators. They're killing our people in Karamoja. We are fighting for freedom. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story, which also represents the story of very many Ugandans that have endured human rights violations for the last 36 years. I never intended to get into politics, and neither did I pay much attention to the political space until my personal consciousness was awakened rudely by my personal humiliation at the hands of a security operative. I'm a musician, and in 2005, I was the hottest artist in town, singing about parties and girls and money. And so, like any other 23-year-old who is successful, I went out and bought a big fancy car, a Cadillac Escalade with spinning wheels and a personalized number plate, Ghetto. One day, I was at a nightclub in Kampala when a security operative pulled me out of my brand new car, slapped me in the face, and put a gun on my head. And he asked me, "Yo, why are you showing off? Don't you know that this country has owners?" I drove away humiliated, and this horrible feeling was all over me, a feeling of you deserved it. Because he was right. I thought I was safe as a celebrity, partying with the rich and powerful military generals, whining and dining with them. But I did not know that it didn't change the reality that I was just a boy from the ghetto, and that I would not be free from their oppressive rule until everyone in Uganda was free. That incident reminded me of the humiliation that many Ugandans faced every day. I couldn't forgive myself for having allowed my temporary and deceptive comfort and elevation from society to blind me from the plight of my fellow disadvantaged people. And I decided on that day that moving forward, I would be a voice of social justice. For 36 years, Uganda has been under the rule of General Yoweri Museveni. More than 85% of Ugandans have never seen another president in their lifetime. Not because the law allows it, no, but because he has always changed the constitution with the help of a compromised parliament, and he has always rigged elections with the help of a personalized military. But regardless of all this, the Western world continued to tolerate and enable General Museveni because he is considered a useful dictator, good for regional security and national stability, even if he bends a few rules. But that's not true. General Museveni rules Uganda with an iron hand. He deploys the military against the citizens and students. Those who oppose him are either put in prison, tortured, or killed. His administration ranks one of the most corrupt in the world. His family members and henchmen have plundered our nation at the expense of healthcare, education, and other social services. So, sitting there in my fancy car, beaten and humiliated, I knew I could not stay silent anymore. So, for the next 10 years, I dedicated my music to the plight of the common Ugandans and the fight for human rights. In 2016, General Museveni rigged the election and declared himself president again. And that's when I decided that if the parliament could not come to the ghetto would go to the parliament. In 2017, thank you. In 2017, I decided to run for a parliamentary seat. Our constituency campaign turned into a national campaign, and we won the seat with 80%. Then we started the People Power movement to awaken a generation of young Ugandans, talking to them about democracy and explaining to them why they must get involved. This annoyed General Museveni, and from then we were branded as enemies. In 2018, while on a campaign trail in the northern Ugandan district of Arua, General Museveni decided that it was too much for him to take. He alleged that our supporters had stoned his motorcade, and for that reason, the military was given orders to shoot and kill. I had just stepped out of my car when suddenly I heard gunshots. Blah, blah, blah. My driver and friend, Yasin Kauma, was shot dead in the car seat that I had been occupying just a few minutes earlier. I took a picture of him and tweeted it, him lying in a pool of blood. I tweeted it with the caption, "Police has shot my driver dead, thinking they've shot at me." And then the Special Forces Command, a section of the military that is led by General Museveni's son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, started hunting for me. For the next 8 hours, I hid in a random hotel room as they broke down every single door looking for me. Meanwhile, my tweet went viral, and suddenly the entire world was watching Museveni. So when they finally found me, they did not kill me, but they tortured me to near death. I was detained in a military base for several days. Not even my family knew where I was. I later learned that people protested in very many parts of the world calling for my release. And for this, I am forever grateful, because if it was not for that pressure, I'm sure I would not be alive to talk to you today. In a military court, I was charged with the offense of annoying the president, treason, and illegal possession of firearms. They displayed 2 machine guns to prove that. And of course, these were trumped up charges. Out of shame, the firearms charges were later dropped and the guns disappeared. 2.5 years later, that case has not been heard. So, in 2019, I announced that I was running for president. Now, under General Museveni's Uganda, that means 3 things. It either means prison, or being forced into exile, or death. But we were ready for all that. And yes, that's exactly what happened. We endured the most horrifying campaign, the most violent campaign, the most brutal and murderous campaign you can ever imagine. In November 2020, I was arrested for allegedly violating COVID-19 regulations, a convenient excuse for Museveni to suppress his political opponents. Our supporters protested against my illegal detention, and the military went on rampage. They shot and killed hundreds of people. But of course, General Museveni came out and said that they killed only 54 protesters. Thousands were arrested, and instead of the accountability for the massacre, General Museveni came out and praised the military for a job well done. A few days later, my bodyguard and friend, Frank Senteza, was deliberately run over and killed by a military police car. Thousands of our supporters were then abducted by security operatives in unmarked vehicles called drones in Uganda. And as I speak to you right now, many are still missing, while others are still in illegal detention, simply for supporting me and our party. Those who were lucky to return, they came back with severe torture marks and horrifying stories. Stories of eyes and fingernails plucked out, stories of men being castrated and women being raped in detention. But we never gave up, and we will never give up. It wasn't me challenging General Museveni. No, it was an entire generation. And for the first time, there were no tribal lines, there were no religious lines, there were no class lines. The entire population was speaking with one big voice. All our people were saying, people power is our power. It was the biggest public phenomenon that I had ever seen. Now, I had been a celebrity, I had done hit songs, I knew what it meant to be famous and having people chant your name wherever you go. but this was different. On election day, after casting my ballot, I went home only to find my house surrounded with hundreds of soldiers, and later I learned that the same was happening to all our party offices across the country. The internet was switched off. Mainstream media was placed under strict censorship. Any radio station that dared to report on the election was immediately shut down. Radio presenters and journalists were arrested. And so in this complete blackout, General Museveni declared himself winner of the election again. International authorities challenged the results as fraudulent, not free, and not fair. But I remained under house arrest for the next 11 days. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not an exaggeration to say that my life is in danger because I live in Uganda, and after here, I am going back to Uganda. I have lost friends and colleagues at the hands of security forces. I have been arrested and charged very, very many times, and my only crime has been challenging General Museveni's dictatorship. I'm therefore here to tell the world with clarity that General Museveni is not the leader you think he is. He is a threat to the people of Uganda, and yes, is a threat to the entire region. The international community has already recognized that the 2021 election in Uganda was neither free nor fair. And it's important that these words are followed with firm actions. First, we call upon the world leaders to stop shaking General Museveni's blood-stained hands through funding and cooperation. Secondly, we call upon the governments and organizations all over the world to impose sanctions on him and the people that he uses to torture and kill innocent citizens. Thirdly, we call upon all those who value democracy and human rights and the rule of law to isolate General Museveni because he has distinguished himself as an excellent violator of human rights who has no respect whatsoever for human life and human dignity. And fourth, we ask you to support our demands for accountability for the crimes against humanity that he has committed and continues to commit against the people of Uganda. Now, for far too long, the Western world has believed that allowing dictators to hold their nations hostage is an unacceptable cost for perceived security. Leaders who tolerate dictators and treat them as legitimate partners are complicit in their crimes. Please do not be partners in crime. Do not sacrifice your moral obligation. Do not sacrifice your moral obligation for short-time convenience. Please stand on the right side of history. I thank you.
All right, listeners and viewers, thank you very much for lending Paula and I your ears and eyes. Paula has since left. She had some other engagements. But, you know, you just heard a very motivating and inspiring speech from this opposition leader from Uganda. Dominicans, it is on YouTube, so you can go look it up. I'll try to share that link sometime later. That link as well is already on my Facebook page. I posted it there yesterday. It's a lofty Durant, so you can go there and get it yourself so that you can, you know, if needs be, listen to it again. I can tell you, I did not get it on the first hearing, and so I know you missed a couple sections as well. So it is very important that you listen to that speech. You know what I'm trying, and that's a key word there, people, trying. I'm trying my very, very best from my contacts in Uganda to have Mr. Bobby Wine speak to us live here someday on our social media feed on our program. It is kind of getting there, but I'm not fully there as yet in terms of making those arrangements. So as soon as everything is done and dusted, as it were, we will try our very best to have this brother you just heard there live in the flesh right here on Civic Vibes. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I don't want to keep you any longer because I know, you know, the banquet of information, education, inspiration, motivation that we had for you this afternoon, it has basically come to an end. And as they say, all good things must come to an end. But in a nutshell, that is the banquet of information we prepared for you guys from the 4 o'clock hour. We hope that you enjoyed every bit of it. And by the comments, by the suggestions, again, I want to apologize that we couldn't go through all your questions, all your comments. We always treasure your company each and every Sunday from the 4 o'clock hour. That is how we do it here from our social media feed. And so we want to thank you very, very much. Just to recap, for those of you who joined late, I saw persons like Marilyn and Aura, the usual suspects, I call them. They came in a bit late. But the beauty of social media is that you can always go back and listen to it at your convenience. We had starting off this afternoon, Brother Paul Barron, and trust me, Paul Barron, he really and truly lifted the bar in terms of the conversation this afternoon, the context of the conversation. And so from our end here, the team, the Civic Vibes team, Paula and myself, we want to say thank you to Brother Paul Barron and on your behalf as well, because he really gave us some food for thought here from the 4 o'clock hour this afternoon. Next, we had Mr. Ian Hughes from Antigua and Barbuda, better known as Magic. He too waved the magic wand and basically impressed on us some of the pressing issues that these guys, they are undergoing, as it were, in Antigua, where the leadership of Gaston Brown is concerned. And so, yes, that in a nutshell, these were our guests, invited guests this afternoon. This program will certainly not be the kind of program that it continues to be without you, the people out there. And so we always want to take time off to thank you guys for staying the course with us. We know we have to put in the hard work. A matter of fact, when I'm done here, Paula is gone, the team, by tonight, the conversation will start to try and engage persons, you know, to present to you next week Sunday. So it's an ongoing work, it's an ongoing struggle, but through patriotic duties, commitment to country, we try our very, very best and try to give the output in terms of the best to your ears and eyes. It's hard work, it's very arduous in nature, but we will try by the grace of God who give us the strength and health to go through. Persons were asking earlier how they can contribute financially to the program. Some of you, I know some of you have the notion out there because it is not on Q95 anymore that we don't have bills to pay. Yes, we still have bills to pay. It may not be as exorbitant like when we were on Q95 in the 2000s, knocking 3000s, but there's still light bills to pay, there's still internet, there's still petrol, there's still paper, there's still research to be done, there's still time. And so those of you who want to contribute towards the program, the back end of this program, when we put on the promo, as we go out, we will give you an outro. These are where you can see the information, you can contribute to the program. And so we want to thank you in advance for your contribution. I saw Brother Jeffrey Brisbane and others ask earlier how they can contribute, and I took note of that. So Dominicans, that is it in terms of the information prepared here for you. We hope that you enjoyed it, but not just enjoying it. The impact of this program is to live it out. Go out there, spread the word one, and also try to put in action what you heard this afternoon so that your community and country can be a much better place to live. Thank you, Dominicans. That is it till we meet in social media land. Same time, same place, next week Sunday at the 4 o'clock hour. Paula and I, we're signing out. Bye-bye. We love you.
I say, we are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for freedom. So the chicken, I don't want it up. We are fighting for freedom. So massacre, we are fighting for freedom. We have to be in the dance, we love to be one of slavery. This operation is what's not appetite. The God is the master, citizens left. The battle of Africa is the big question. What was the purpose of the liberation when we got up a peaceful transition? What is the purpose of the constitution when the government disrespect the constitution? What is my freedom of expression when you chat me because of my expression? Look what you're doing to this nation. Teaching the future generation. See our leaders become misleaders and see our mentors become tormentors. Freedom fighters become dictators. They look at the youth and say we are disruptors. We are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for freedom. Every pop watching tomorrow to chat them do. We are fighting for freedom. But then massively, come on, Karamoja. We are fighting for freedom. Oh, imagine you know, we are fighting for freedom. It's a revelation for the generation. Whether you are doctor or a farmer, whether you are teacher or policeman, could have be a tax driver or a student, could have be a lawyer, could have be a soldier. We are fighting for freedom. 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 Yes, man, like Martin Luther said, in the end, we remember not the work of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.